maybe go for, if you have Fake Out, Trick Room, and then try to bring in Rhyperior.
So many different options that these players could really go for, and I'm really excited to see, because I think that turn 0 is going to be particularly important.
Yeah.
I think that, especially when these matches are so frail and so on that fine line, you kind of need to be on that forefront of what you're going to do, and we're about to kind of get into things and see exactly how this is going to go. We have Duraludon, and we also have the Sylveon now coming out for Federico, and we will see Jack bringing the Grimmsnarl and the Duraludon.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Sylveon coming out here quite weak to the opposing Duraludon. You have to worry about a bunch of different plays here from the Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl can fake out either Pokemon, it can Thunder Wave either, it can also just go for a Fake Tears and double up into a slot. So lots of heavy pressure immediately here. And yeah, Federico here does not actually have a speed control with Whimsicott, so that Whimsicott might be in the back, and we're going to see the first Dynamax come out.
The first Dynamax is going to be that Duraludon, and most importantly, it's going to be the Duraludon from Jack. Jack utilizing the Grimmsnarl on its side in order to really help to try to set up for maybe some big impressive damage, but you're going to have to wait to find out, because it's also going to get matched by a Dynamax coming out from Federico.
Yeah, so, you know, that might give us some information on which Duraludon is faster here. We'll have to see if they actually speed tie or not, but Jax, of course, does go first. And that is a really big deal when you're playing this Duraludon versus Duraludon potential mirror match here. So the big question I have here is, what does Grimmsnarl go for? It's just that Fake Tears immediately.
It's going to be the Fake Tears right into Federico's Duraludon, maybe looking at Jack to do some big damage to that Duraludon, but it's actually a Steel Spike into the Sylveon, which gets the one-hit knockout, so that's going to be an early Pokemon advantage for Jack.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see Sylveon come out as a lead here immediately, specifically because of its matchup against the Duraludon, but I think maybe what Federico was trying to go for was try to snipe a Jellicent with the double up, but Max Steel Spike here in return. We'll go into Grimmsnarl, and we'll pick up the knockout, but that Fake Tears there earlier onto the Duraludon on Federico's end means that Jack's Duraludon will still pressure with more damage, and of course we've seen Jack's Duraludon Dynamax first and it attack first, so it makes me think that it's probably not a speed tie, it's going to be naturally faster.
Naturally faster, but look at a Pokemon that's also going to be pretty fast. It's going to be a Dracovish now coming out in that place of the Sylveon for Federico, and a Jellicent now coming out for Jack.
Yeah, so I think Jack's Duraludon's in a phenomenal position right now. You have to obviously worry about the Scarf Dracovish, but Dracovish typically doesn't really have many attacks that can hit Duraludon. You can even switch out to Gastrodon if you have it in the back, but it's just going to be a Choice Scarf Crunch coming out immediately.
Oh, and that does so much damage to the Jellicent, over half. That's going to put it within knockout range for another Crunch, but the Max Wormwind going into the Dracovish slot, and look at how much damage that does as well. It is going to get another knockout, and Jack is just taking these knockouts left and right, getting maximum value from that Duraludon.
Yeah, and you know, once again, moving first, it really makes me think that it's probably faster here. So we'll see a Max Wormwind in return. Let's see if this is enough to get the knockout. Oh, falls just short. Barely
going to hang on. That is so low in terms of health points, but I think we're also going to see those attack drops, which don't, and I think mattered a little bit more for the other side. But Trick Room, most importantly, going off and will be in favor a little bit of Federico's Duraludon.
Yeah, Trick Room there is an interesting decision, especially because Federico brought the Conkeldurr specifically to counter a lot of the Trick Room Pokemon. You've already committed your Dynamax to Duraludon on Jackson, so I think right now Federico is actually in a great position because of that Trick Room. Jellicent doesn't really pressure either Pokemon with too much damage. You can pretty much double attack here relatively free, and Gastrodon's going to be that last one. I think Conkeldurr might be able to really pull this one off.
Conkeldurr going for the Drain Punch. Duraludon doesn't have too many legs to stand on, so it will get knocked out from that Drain Punch. And that leaves Jack with the last two Pokemon. A Jellicent in the back that's a little bit under half HP, and the Max Wormwind is going to come out first from Federico. And that does so much damage to that Gastrodon.
Yeah, it does so much damage, and I think, you know, Jack's approach was, okay, I'm going to set up the Trick Room and try to sweep in the end, but the thing is that Gastrodon and Jellicent have taken so much damage. Duraludon and Conkeldurr have not taken any damage on Federico's end. You see, it's the Flame Orb Guts variant here on Conkeldurr as well, so probably be able to get a one-hit KO onto either Pokemon. So I think because Jack committed the Dynamax to Duraludon earlier, it's going to be really tough for him to actually pull out this win despite setting up the Trick Room. We know that the Duraludon on Federico's end is the Assault Vest variant as well, so you have to double up into something to get a knockout. A Mach Punch here should just knock out Gastrodon.
It is going to knock out Gastrodon, which means that Jellicent's going to be the last Pokemon. You can already see the handshake on the stage, but Jellicent going for the Surf. just to see what damage it can do. It's giving a little bit more information, just seeing how little that ends up doing. Duraludon firing back with a Thunderbolt. That's going to be enough to give the first game to Federico.
Yeah, that was definitely a swing of momentum there. I felt like Jack had a really early lead. He was able to, distribute so much damage with that Duraludon, but then basically didn't get a great third turn of Dynamax off it, just fainted. And I think it was great awareness by Federico to have that Conkeldurr in the back. I think you have to be bringing it into this matchup for Trick Room specifically, and that's exactly what happened, right? Jack set up the Trick Room maybe a little bit too late. I think one of the approaches he can go with is setting up Trick Room earlier on, although we now know that his Duraludon looks like is faster than Federico's. So, I mean, I think Jack's approach there was solid in the beginning, but then I think you have to not necessarily just click Trick Room for the endgame. You have to think a little bit harder about who Federico potentially has in the back. So I think I really like the approach there from the start from Jack. You could see so much damage coming out from this Life Orb Duraludon, whereas Federico's is a little bulkier, slower on Assault Vest variant. So, Jack can definitely go with the same lead, but if he wants to, I think you might want to consider not setting up Trick Room. Even if Trick Room just doesn't go up there, you at least have a better matchup because then your Duraludon will get another big attack off. And of course, the Duraludon on Federico's end had eaten the Fake Tears, but didn't really take any damage after that because no attack went into that slot.
I'm kind of wondering, I mean, think about the fact that Jack's Duraludon got 2 one-hit knockouts back-to-back. It was faster. It was able to dish out so much damage. Why not bring something like the Charizard in the back after you know that Dracovish is out of the way? Yeah,
absolutely. I think Charizard would be a great Pokemon to have, and like you mentioned, if Dracovish is knocked out, there isn't anything that's really threatening it for a one-hit KO, other than maybe Rotom Heat coming out and clicking something like Dynamax Thunderbolt or Max Electric, for example. But I think now Federico knows, okay, well, Jack's Duraludon is consistently outspeeding me. He didn't bring Whimsicott in that last game, which I was actually pretty surprised to see. So I think, one thing that Federico might be afraid of is, of course, the fake out from the Grimmsnarl. So he might not feel, super comfortable leading. And there's Grimmsnarl Jellicent, which I kind of expected in that first game.
Grimmsnarl Jellicent's going to set up for something just a little bit different here for Jack, and Federico now with the Duraludon and the Sylveon again. So a similar lead for Federico, but Jack going for something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think Jack's approach here is to definitely set up Trick Room, but this is a big turn one. If you can Dynamax the correct Pokemon, avoid a fake out from Grimmsnarl, and just double up into that Jellicent, you might just knock out and have such a big lead. So we'll see first of all, if there's a fake out coming up from Grimmsnarl, and does it target the correct slot.
Duraludon going to Dynamax, so if there is a fake out that comes out from that Grimmsnarl, this Duraludon's going to be completely immune to it. So won't get flinched, will take the damage, but we're about to find out. Grimmsnarl is going to go for the fake out, goes into the Sylveon, so did make the correct call there, but Duraludon gets a chance to go for the Max Steel Spike. It's going to go right into the Jellicent, but it's not going to be super effective damage, so that Jellicent is going to be able to hang on and get an attack off.
Yeah, and I think Federico going for that, one, to get that defense boost, and two, not actually wanting to give Jack a free switch in from this Trick Room, which is going up. So it's kind of a nightmare scenario if your opponent sets up Trick Room and you give them a free switch, and you'd imagine something like Rhyperior or Gastrodon can just come in, Dynamax, and start doing a lot of damage. So even though, that Max Steel Spike was not very effective, it's actually a play that I think makes a lot of sense, where now you can at least stall out Trick Room a little bit easier. Both Grimmsnarl and Jellicent are relatively passive Pokemon. So I think, this is a good position for Grimmsnarl to go for some support moves if it's going for something like a Light Screen or a Reflect. Can also just go for Fake Tears to, start lowering that special defense and getting some damage off. Will-O-Wisp.
Ooh, a Will-O-Wisp, but Sylveon's going to avoid the attack, so Jellicent is actually not going to make a switch now, but this Yawn from the Sylveon going into the Grimmsnarl might force a switch from Jack in the future. Max Steel Spike once again going into the Jellicent is just starting to do some chip damage to it and potentially putting it within a knockout range of something like a Dracovish flinch, crunch in the back.
I actually really love how Federico is playing this despite Trick Room being up. That's already 2 turns of Trick Room basically, or 1 turn of Trick Room out of the way, and right now, Grimmsnarl is Yawn, so you feel pressure to switch it out. But if you switch it out, Sylveon can just Yawn whatever slot comes in. Duraludon's increasing the defense through Max Steel Spike, so even if Rhyperior's in the back, it's not going to do very much damage. So Grimmsnarl can continue to spam Fake Tears, but Federico is playing around Trick Room really well and not giving Jack a free switch in.
Jellicent going for the Surf. Will connect with both Pokemon, but doesn't do very much. But wait a minute, what is this? Grimmsnarl is going to switch out with the eject button. That's going to give Jack a free switch.
Yeah, if there's one way to get a free switch in, that's it. So Gastrodon is going to come in after that Surf, but I mean, the Sylveon can just Yawn that slot, and that's exactly what Federico goes for. The Yawn tech is just paying dividends right now, and that's so big. Finally going for a Max Wormrun here to probably pick up the knockout here into Jellicent, and that's just another Trick Room turn gone.
Another Trick Room turn, and Gastrodon is not quite the answer to either Pokemon that are on the field. Jellison finally gets knocked out, but that means that Trick Room only has 2 more turns, and there's no way to reset the Trick Room.
Yeah, so I've got to wonder what Jack's last Pokemon is. It is that Rhyperior, so at least Jack has been able to put himself in a position where he stalled out the Dynamax, and now he has Rhyperior under Trick Room for, you know, at least like Trick Room isn't over. So now you presumably will want a Dynamax that you could switch out the Gastrodon. The scary thing here is I think you don't want to get yawned by the Sylveon, so one thing you could do is switch out Gastrodon into the Grimmsnarl, Dynamax the Rhyperior, and then go for something like a Max Quake into Sylveon. We'll see if that's enough to get the knockout depending on how Sylveon is trained. If Sylveon's able to get another yawn off though against Rhyperior, should it Dynamax here, that will make things a lot tougher. But despite Federico I think playing really well around this Trick Room the first couple of turns, Rhyperior is out, and I think that is one of the best Pokemon against Federico's team. And he's been able to get it out safely, and it's not going to fall asleep this turn.
No, it's not going to fall asleep yet, and it's actually going to be time to Dynamax. Jack going for the Dynamax factor onto that Rhyperior. Now, we don't know specifically how this Rhyperior is trained or what item it's holding, but if I had to guess, it'd probably be something like a weakness policy, which makes that Rhyperior ever more scary. Sylveon, though, going for a Protect from Federico's side, just in case Rhyperior or anything goes for a move, but it is going to be an Earth Power from the Gastrodon right into the Duraludon, and that Duraludon with those fake tears is going to go out pretty quickly.
And the Max Steel Spike comes out here, giving the defense boost onto both Pokemon. Will knock out the Sylveon, but Jack, more importantly, there opted not to switch out the Gastrodon, opted to just say, you know what, I'm going to get put to sleep after this yawn, but at least I'll knock out the Duraludon here. I know you're Assault vested. I've gotten the fake tears off as well, and willing to take that trade. So at this point, Jack is pretty much relying solely on Rhyperior to really dish out damage. Gastrodon, is going to be asleep for a little bit longer. I think Conkeldurr, the right Pokemon for Federico to have here in the back, but what Federico wants to aim for right now is to stall out this Trick Room. There's the Guts on the Conkeldurr as well, and then you also want to stall out the Dynamax, because then you'll be doing so much more damage to Rhyperior. Rhyperior can definitely easily take an attack from this Conkeldurr right now, so I think Federico really has to stall out the Trick Room, and Dracovish is the last one here, so Gastrodon actually still provides value despite being asleep.
Yeah, Gastrodon is going to provide some value. Conkeldurr going for the Protect. We saw the Flame Orb on it before that we'll get a chance to proc after this Protect goes off, and most importantly, it's going to protect just in case this Rhyperior decides to go into that slot, but it's actually the Dracovish. Takes that Max Steals like champ.
Yeah, but another, defense boost here for the Rhyperior. So this is at +2 defense now, and it's still Dynamax. Has one more turn of Dynamax. Trick Room was over, but because Gastrodon is still out on the field, you can't click Fish's Ren, so you're forced to click something like Crunch. Rock Slide here can't even flinch Rhyperior because it's Dynamax. So I really like the choice to go for those defense boosts, actually, to make your matchup against Conkeldurr a little bit better. I mean, if you knock out this Conkeldurr and you still have the Gastrodon around, Dracovish is relatively useless, and it's going to be tough to knock out this Gastrodon, but this is risky. I mean, if Federico actually calls this and went for Fish's Rend into Rhyperior, that would be insane. And no, it's just a crunch.
No, it's going to be a crunch right into the Grimmsnarl that switched into that Gastrodon's place. Now Conkeldurr's turn to attack. It will be the Drain Punch right into the Grimmsnarl as well. That does a significant chunk of damage, and most importantly, we're going to see that Conkeldurr actually moves before this Rhyperior in the Trick Room setting. And wow, look at that damage.
Yeah, so Jack making the switch there, saying, okay, I have to take a guaranteed turn to sleep here. If I get doubled up into something from like a Crunch and a Drain Punch, which is exactly what Federico goes for, then Gastrodon might even get KO'd, and if Gastrodon gets KO'd, then you can just switch the Dracovish out, back in, and just click Fish's Ren twice and win the game. So good awareness there. I like the play from both ends. Jack ends up getting the better end of the trade-off, though. Now you also have Grimmsnarl, which can click Fake Out on either of these two Pokemon. You know the Dracovish here is Choice Scarf, so yeah, I mean, I think that's an easier target here. And so the question is now, what does Rhyperior go for in terms of an attack? And it's actually a Reflect. I like that a lot, too.
Interesting. It's been a while since I've seen a Grimmsnarl that's capable of setting up screens, but I really like that from Jack. And
oh my goodness!
Oh, look at how little that does. Rhyperior going for the high horsepower. It is not going to miss this time. Dracovish getting put so low.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really difficult for Federico to pull this off at this point. I mean, there is still that Sylveon in the back, so you can, maybe get a couple of Hyper Voices off, but given that this Grimmsnarl had a Reflect, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Light Screen as well. Looks like it's just going to be going for an attack this turn, but look how little damage Rhyperior is taking right now.
Yeah, that does a little bit. Oh, but it does get the defense drop, so maybe putting it in a little bit better range here, but the foul play, Dracovish is going to get knocked out, and this is going to be a Pokemon advantage here for Jack. Even look at that Drain Punch, it does nothing.
Yeah, even after that defense drop, and if Rhyperior connects with a high horsepower, you'll knock out Conkeldurr, and it's a 3v1, and there's the weakness policy as well.
weakness policy activated, which means that Rhyperior's attack and special attack are going to be increased. So high horsepower going to hit for a heavy amount of damage, enough to get the knockout. And Federico is down to their last Pokemon for this game, which is that Sylveon. Yeah, so Sylveon's going to come out, and you know, that is probably the best Pokemon because you can at least click Hyper Voice. So the question I have here is, will Hyper Voice knock out the Rhyperior? If not, then Rhyperior will be able to retaliate and get a KO onto the Sylveon. But if you're actually able to knock out Rhyperior, I think Sylveon just wins the game. So Fake Tear's coming out. No better play to really go for it here on the Grimmsnarl. So let's see if Rhyperior can take this Hyper Voice. Sylveon going for the Hyper Voice first.
Oh, and it hangs on.
It does hang on, so Rhyperior's going to be able to get off another attack.
Let's see. We saw the, Heavy Slam makes sense. That is what was coming from the Max Steel Spike earlier. So that's going to knock out Sylveon. We're going to go to a Game 3 here in this best of 3.
How exciting. There's some incredible adjustments to be able to bring this to a Game 3. Yeah,
and it all really started with the Trick Room adjustment. I thought like Trick Room plus Rhyperior looked good from Jackson, and I think, that game highlights just how good it can be because despite Jack only having 2 turns to work with Rhyperior under Trick Room, he was still able to win because he was able to get these defense boost the Rhyperior enough to a point. He made some really nice calls too, going for the Max Steel Spike twice, getting those defense boosts, capitalizing off Conkeldurr, protecting, and going for that prediction as well. So I think great adjustments by Jack, realizing that, hey, Trick Room is really good. I just have to keep it, or I have to put on the pressure early because in that first game, he didn't bring that Rhyperior. And so for Federico's end, I think then you have to ask yourself, okay, how do I deny this Trick Room? One way to do so is potentially going for that Dynamax on turn 1. For example, if you could Dynamax something like Sylveon instead of the Duraludon, expecting a Fake Out into that slot, and try to double up onto the Jellicent. I think that is definitely one approach to denying Trick Room. And if you deny Trick Room, I think it's a lot more difficult for Jack to win because then he's using really slow Pokemon like Rhyperior and Gastrodon.
Something else that I really liked about the way that Jack ended up playing that second game was their positioning. That Gastrodon ended up putting so much pressure onto Federico to kind of play around that, and I really like that play as well.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we have to talk about that we didn't really mention in that last game was the eject button on Grimmsnarl as well. There's no trick on this Grimmsnarl, so that might seem a little odd, but because there's actually the Surf on this Jellicent, you can see the synergy where you basically give yourself a free switch in. In this case, Federico is actually able to mitigate that slightly with those Yawns, which was a really cool tech move on the Sylveon, explains why he brought it. But yeah, being able to give yourself a free switch in into something like Gastrodon and then surf yourself, I think is a really neat thing to do.
Game 3. It all comes down to this.
Yeah, so the big question here is how do you approach it from Jack's end? Do you go with the Trick Room approach again? I think it worked out really well, and I think it definitely makes sense. But then you have to consider, okay, how does Jack beat the Trick Room approach? And in my opinion, the best way to beat it is just denying it outright on turn 1 with a potential like double up, basically. So yeah, Federico will, I think, maybe want to consider who he Dynamaxes here. It's going to be the same lead once again, so let's see if we get Jellicent and Grimmsnarl. It is.
It's going to be Jellicent and Grimmsnarl. So setting things up just a little bit here, a bit differently. So we will have Jack running that Jellicent and that Grimmsnarl.
All right, let's use Dynamaxing. I'm wondering, like, you could choose the Dynamax Sylveon here to block the Fake Out, then go for something like Max Starfall on a Draco Meteor, Dragon Pulse, even a Thunderbolt, whatever your attack is on Duraludon. And it is the Sylveon Dynamax. All right, did Jack call this? If not, Jellicent will probably be going down. That would be huge. That's the exact adjustment that I was talking about. I wanted to see.
Let's find out. I'm on the edge of my seat right now to see what goes.
Fake Out. Going to the Fake Out. Sylveon. Oh, that's so huge.
Oh my gosh, the crowd's absolutely wild right now because Duraludon gets a chance to go for the Thunderbolt. It's going to potentially put it into the knockout round. So let's see how much damage he actually gets the paralysis.
Jellicent might be able to take a Max Starfall here, so let's see. Will it be able to hang on? Oh no, it gets the knockout. No Trick Room available for this game. Yeah, no Trick Room, so prowess there didn't end up mattering. This Sylveon strong enough to get that knockout once Dynamax, and that is such a big lead here for Federico. Like we were talking about, now if Jack does have the Rhyperior and the Gastrodon in the back, you're staring down a Sylveon, which can just go for another Max Starfall. You can Dynamax one of your 2 Ground-type Pokemon. Those are pretty strong. Rhyperior is going to come in. And I think, Rhyperior is still such a good Pokemon in this matchup, but Jack's not out of it by any means. One thing that we saw in the last game is how big of a threat Dracovish can be. So I think if you're on Federico's end, you're assuming that Gastrodon's going to be in the back. If you brought the Dracovish, then your goal is to just knock out everything around Rhyperior as quickly as possible. Once you pull that off, then you'll be able to just bring out the Dracovish and sweep. And Sylveon, a great Pokemon to have out in front of a Grimmsnarl. You can just go for something like another Max Starfall into that space really safely.
Oh my goodness, what a play. I mean, we're going to see whether or not Jack can come back from this. It's going to be the Rhyperior, the Dynamax is. Is it going to be enough, though? Because it's one of the slowest Pokemon on the field. It's not going to be able to get these attacks off very quickly, and even if it does get those defense boosts, might not be enough to get through this. Grimmsnarl going for the fake tears onto the Sylveon just to get it ready for a potential attack. But Duraludon gets a chance to go for that Flash Cannon before we see this Rhyperior go, and that's going to be really close to getting the knockout, but not quite. More importantly, there's that eject button again. Grimmsnarl gets a chance to switch out.
Yeah, but I wonder, that's actually a really cool play. If Gastrodon is in that back here and you're forced to bring it out, it is Gastrodon, and Federico targeted that slot. It's going to be so much damage onto it, and that's one step closer to winning with Dracovish.
Max Starfall goes into the Rhyperior, though, but look at how much damage.
That's really good damage,
yeah. That's like about a quarter. Max Quake, though, chance to get a fire back from this Rhyperior. It's going to go right into the Duraludon, and that, while that's going to be a knockout, I think we saw that Duraludon get a chance to do a lot of work.
Yeah, getting a lot of damage off there with Flash Cannon. I would have loved to see the double up there into the Grimmsnarl, but still really, really good damage there onto the Rhyperior. That's another turn of Dynamax down from both ends, and so Federico will get a free switch in. I'm really curious whether he has the Dracovish in the back or not, but even if you did have it in the back, this would not be the position to bring it out in. Your goal is basically to knock out the Gastrodon. Now, one side effect of setting up Misty Terrain is that the Conkeldurr actually won't get the burn from Guts, so it is going to be doing less damage, and so Federico's slowly chipping away at it, but with that Max Quick, you do get a special defense boost, so I'm wondering even if like a Max Starfall and a Drain Punch now will be able to knock out either of these two Pokemon. We'll have to see.
Gastrodon switching back out. Looks like Jack is really relying on Grimmsnarl to get some work done, whether it's just going to be soaking up some damage or being able to survive. And Max Starfall from the Sylveon will be Grimmsnarl taking that, but it's just going to be for fodder. Grimmsnarl getting knocked out in the process. So Jack's down to their last two Pokemon. Well, Conkeldurr goes for the Drain Punch. Gets it to below half, but the weakness policy procs.
The weakness policy procs, and more importantly, Gastrodon is still conserved as well, and this Max Quake, we'll see who it targets, but is it able to just get another knockout? I mean, Rhyperior might be able to pull this off. It goes into Conkeldurr and gets the one-hit KO. Oh my goodness, this has been a back and forth game. It felt like Federico had such a great turn one, but once again, you can see the strength of Rhyperior against Federico's entire team. So now Sylveon's Dynamax is going to end. Rhyperior has another turn of Dynamax. It's gotten multiple boosts from that Max Quake as well. Gastrodon lose all his boosts, and is it going to be Dracovish? It is Dracovish in the back. Oh boy.
Oh no. Dracovish is going to be locked into a really difficult situation against Jack's final two Pokemon. Doesn't really have the ability to use that Vicious Rend. So what is it going to have to go for in this situation?
Yeah, Sylveon in this position is pretty much relegated to clicking Hyper Voice. Hyper Voice does pretty good damage, and I mean, yeah, what can Dracovish really do here? You can go for maybe Crunch onto one of two, but I'm not even sure a Crunch and a Hyper Voice is enough to knock out this Dynamax Rhyperior, and by activating the weakness policy, this Rhyperior will be able to get a one-hit KO onto either of these three Pokemon, so Jack might just be able to eke it out. Let's see if Crunch and Hyper Voice is enough to get the KO.
Crunch.
There's the Crunch. Here's Hyper Voice. Is it enough? Oh, it hangs on.
Rhyperior going to be able to hang on, going for the Max Rockfall into one of the last two Pokemon that Federico has left. It's going to be that Dracovish, which gets one hit knocked out. It's just Sylveon left.
Oh, it goes into Dracovish, so that gives Sylveon another opportunity to click Hyper Voice next turn, but, this is a Rhyperior with +2 special defense, and Sand is up now. Her power is not going to do too much damage here, but still a sizable amount, actually. That is probably enough where, yeah, even if you knock out the Rhyperior, I think Gastrodon just wins now, so, oh my goodness, this Rhyperior pulled up. Wow. Such a great comeback despite Trick Room not being up. Wow.
That's the power of the weakness policy Rhyperior.
And it really goes to show, I mean, like, I think Federico, probably doubled up onto that Gastrodon slot, and Jack made a great switch to conserve that Gastrodon, specifically to render Dracovish useless. Let's see if Hyper Voice can get some critical hits here. Oh! Gastrodon hangs on!
Gastrodon's gonna hang on. Rhyperior gets knocked out, but that means that Gastrodon gets a chance to fire back with an Earth Power. We saw how much it did on that last turn, and that's gonna be enough to get the knockout! Oh
what
my goodness,
finals
what a
there.
series! Wow, congratulations.
Like, I think great adjustments by Jack to realize, hey, Rhyperior is really good in this matchup. The only things you have to really hit me is, that Conkeldurr, but what does Conkeldurr really do once I'm Dynamax? You Drain Punch me, you activate my weakness policy, and then I sweep. And, of course, the one thing on Federico's team that really counters the Rhyperior is that Dracovish, but what's the best answer against the Dracovish? It's a Gastrodon, and Jack did a great job in those games to conserve the Gastrodon, meaning, like, he always had it safely there to protect the Rhyperior. So great play, great adjustments, and even though he didn't even get that Trick Room up in that third game, was able to eke out with the victory. But I think props to Federico as well. He made some really good plays, and I mean the turn 1 Dynamax is exactly what I wanted to see from him to deny that Trick Room. But I think like activating the weakness policy there was something that he maybe needed to play around, because as soon as you activate the weakness policy, Rhyperior is going to get a one-hit KO on practically everything. And you know, the other thing I have to question is, you know, is it worth bringing Dracovish in the back? I think the answer is probably still yes, because that is such a good answer against the Rhyperior. But then, you know, you saw how smart Jack played with that Gastron. He never basically allowed it to get KO'd because he knew, okay, this is my win condition. But I think one thing that could have been absolutely huge was the turn we saw the Flash Cannon go into Grimmsnarl. At that point, you know Grimmsnarl's moveset. You've seen all 4 attacks. It doesn't have something like a Protect. So you can Flash Cannon and go for a Max Starfall into that slot, and that covers every option. Right. If you know, go for the Flash Cannon, he doesn't switch out, which is what happened, then you get a huge Max Starfall off against Gastron. More importantly, before any special defense boost comes up. Once you get that single Max Starfall, I think Gastron is probably in KO range from another Max Starfall, Drain Punch, or Hyper Voice. So I think that was probably the most critical turn that could have been different here for Federico. But Jack, recognizing just how good Rhyperior is, despite going for the fake out onto Dynamax Sylveon, still able to eke out with the victory. And that was so close. That was so close. It really could have gone either way. Yeah, just a huge back and forth, just so many turns that were so dynamic in terms of who could have been the victor there. But congratulations to Jack Gilbert. He's going to be our senior champion for the 2020 Pokemon Oceania International Championships. Congratulations. That was crazy. I'm still shocked. I know. I really like it because you see how players adjust and how really smart players are able to figure out what to do, right? Both players made a great adjustment. Jack, after losing that first game, realized, wow, like, you know, Trick Room is really good here, but I didn't even bring out the best Pokemon for Trick Room, which is Rhyperior. I thought Rhyperior was one of the better Pokemon in this matchup. Right. I think, like, the Grimmsnarl, Jellicent lead is the best way to set up Trick Room, and then Rhyperior in the back. Because without Grimmsnarl, you don't have Fake Out support, so there's no other way to really guarantee Jellicent getting that Trick Room off, so I think that's the best lead by far if you want to go set up Trick Room, and then Rhyperior is always going to be in the back. You kind of need Gastrodon to protect the Dracovish, and I think Federico still brought the right Pokemon for the most part. Like, if you look at what he has, you know, can Rotom Heat really do much against Rhyperior and Gastrodon? Absolutely not, so I don't think that's the correct answer. I think, like, yeah, and then Conkeldurr, you know, is really strong, but it's tough once Rhyperior gets a single boost off, or once it's Dynamax as well. I mean, it, you know, it just stays around for a long time. And like Whimsicott doesn't seem like the best Pokemon to bring, because at this point you know that Jack is going with the slower Trick Room mode of your team. So I think for Federico's end, he definitely was bringing the right Pokemon, and he had the tools to win that. And you know, it just came down to 1 or 2 different plays, but really great adjustments from both ends. And I just think like that was a really, really great set to watch. Well, commiserations to Federico, but congratulations to Jack. Let's head over to the main stage and hear for our brand new senior champion.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. I'm here with your 2020 Oceania International Champion for the video game in the seniors division, Jack Gilbert. How does it feel to have won this tournament?
It's a bit overwhelming because I didn't even think I would make top cut. So, yeah, it's really unexpected.
So tell me about that. What was your preparation going into this tournament?
We did a bit of practice. Yeah, it was like 2 hours a day or something. And yeah, it just led to this, which is really great.
What made you pick the Pokemon that you won the tournament with? Were there any favorites?
I wanted to run an Obstagoon team with Flame Wheel, but my brother, he made a different team, and it worked better, yeah.
Yeah, well, tell me about that finals match. What was your plan going into it, and how did it play out?
I was gonna try and set up first, and that might have helped me position better. And after that third round where he knocked out my Jellicent, I couldn't really do much, but somehow, yeah, it just, I don't know what happened.
Well, you clearly won, so congratulations on that. Is there anybody at home that you want to say thank you to for helping you get this far?
To my mum, she took time off work here. Yeah, it was very great. To my older brother for making the team, and my 2 younger brothers who competed, but yeah, close, yeah.
Well, congratulations again. I won't keep you much longer. We're going to be back with the juniors finals next here in Oceania, so please stay tuned and thank you for watching.
love probably the fact that I get to play with my mates.
I think it's how you're able to meet people and how you're able to connect with people regardless of where you're from. Like, I've met so many different people from different countries, places, and getting to know them and just being more involved in the scene has been like really fun.
Just the community of people. Like, I have friends from Malaysia, America. My Portuguese mate stayed over at my house last year for the event. That's the kind of like community you get.
Pokemon would have to be Litten or Litleo, because I love cats.
Yveltal. I used it all of Ultra Series, and I love the Pokemon. I think it looks awesome.
My favorite Pokemon is Blastoise, and he's just got cannons. He's really cool. You can't go wrong.
I've been playing for a few years now.
I played at the Oceanics in 2017.
My first event was really in 2009, but I didn't travel for events until 2015, and that's kind of what I consider my start.
Favorite Pokemon to battle with right now is probably, I'm using Obstagoon.
I would have to say Excadrill, really, because it's Focus Sash and all the other things that you can have with it.
Yveltal, again. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's time for to crown the second champion of the 2020 Pokemon Oceania International Championships. My name is Rosemary Kelly, joined by Gabby Snyder, and we just crowned our very first in Jack Gilbert for the seniors division. Let's go over to the juniors.
Yeah, I was really happy to talk to Jack after his win. I mean, he looked so just in awe of the moment, you know, just really sort of, I can't believe I won, I can't believe I'm here, and congratulations to him. That was such an exciting match, but, you know, there is always more Pokemon action to be had here on Championship Sunday, and I cannot wait to watch the junior division champion be crowned.
Well, what are some of your favorite moments? Let's go over to our social channel and share those with us with the hashtag #PlayPokemon. That's going to be on twitter.com/PlayPokemon. We've been showing you some of our favorite highlights on our side of things while we've been here at the Oceania International Championships. But you can also follow along with us at Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, all at that /Pokemon.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you've seen here this weekend that has really just made your day, made your month, maybe just that exciting moment that really stood out to you, make sure to share it with that hashtag #PlayPokemon. You know, there have been a ton of moments here while we're watching the crowd out in the hall where people are standing and cheering and just getting involved, and using that hashtag and joining in on that conversation is how you too can join in on the hype, even at home in the comfort of your pajamas. So lots of fun to be had here. I think I just heard some cheers erupt from the Pokken tournament crowd, who are currently, you know, in the process of their championship Sunday as well. So much Pokemon fun to be had here. And again, I cannot wait to see these juniors play for their championship title.
Juniors is one of my favorite divisions because it's where it all starts for a lot of players. You get a chance to work your way up from the juniors division to the seniors into the masters, and they're so cute.
They are. I just hesitate a little bit because they're cute, but they're fierce.
Yes, they are very fierce.
I mean, one of the juniors we'll be featuring on stream today has 21 regional championships to his name, which, I mean, if someone wants to do the math on that, I'm pretty sure that's enough championship points to qualify for the World Championships for at least a majority of his lifetime. Yeah. Like, it's seriously insane how crazy good these juniors are and how well their teams are built. I mean, a lot of times, you know, when in the juniors and in the seniors division, like Jack just mentioned earlier in his interview, they get their teams from their friends, their older siblings, and, you know, it's a family effort. You know, the family sits
all the camaraderie
down,
there.
They help each other practice. You know, the junior maybe has an older brother or sister to look up to, and it's always fun to see them do well in that regard and, you know, play a lot of strategies that we don't get to highlight sometimes. A lot of times junior teams like to feature a common core or a common archetype with a couple of modifications that you otherwise don't see. So it's always a great opportunity not to just feature some up-and-coming stars, some up-and-coming Pokemon as well.
Well, both of these players have worked their way through a fierce bracket in order to get here at the very end. These are the last two players remaining, Justin Miranda Radford and Simone Lim.
Yeah, so Justin Miranda Radford is no stranger to the finals at any stage. He is the one that is the person to beat, the incoming Oceania International Champion for the juniors division last year. Also has those 21 regionals titles. I mean, we'll get more into his accomplishments later, but just really the person to beat because as you can tell, not only was he the first seed going into this tournament, he was undefeated in Swiss and he won his way through into the finals round. So just a really commanding, you know, sort of tournament run for him. Simone, on the other hand, just barely made it into top cut at the 7th seed. She went 3-2 yesterday during the Swiss rounds for the juniors division, but was able to win her way all the way to the finals here. And, you know, that's something that you cannot underestimate. Somebody who's, you know, really been there with that pressure, you know, understanding how much is on the line. This is also, I believe, her first season competing as well. So, you know, regardless of what happens in this finals match, you know, both these trainers are very accomplished, and I cannot wait to see where they go from here because, you know, if your first season you make it to the finals of the Oceania International Championships, I mean, you can really only go up.
It's a pretty good omen.
Yeah,
you can kind of only go up from there. I mean, that's
so.
Really impressive, and I think for both of these players, they really deserve to be here, and I can't wait to see who we're going to crown for that juniors title.
Me too, and it's always fun to see, you know, the families and friends cheering on these trainers in the audience. Simone, she has a couple friends out there. One of them has a Go Simone sign with a little heart on it, which is super cute. You know, Justin's mom is in the audience cheering him on. You know, she's at like practically every single tournament he goes to. So just really strong family and friends supporting a lovely community of Play Pokemon. So thank you guys out there in the hall for cheering on, you know, your friends, your sons, your brothers, your sisters. It really does make a difference, and just look at how excited they are to get playing. I don't know if we'll get to see Dynamax Eevee in the game, but that is a Dynamax Eevee on the stage for us as well right there.
That is.
Everybody looks so happy. I cannot wait to see how this is going to play out.
Oh, maybe a little nervous too. Maybe just a little bit nervous.
I mean, Eevee's right there to help calm all nerves. So how can you be nervous when there is a giant Eevee friend sitting right there with you?
All right, well, you mentioned just how accomplished Justin is as a player. So let's take a look a little bit more at those accomplishments. A little bit nervous, but very excited. Look at them go. Top 8 at Worlds last year and the defending 2019 Oceania Internationals champion. I mean, wow, I've also never seen a higher number than that for regional champion.
I'm telling you, he has enough championship points to invest in his future and just qualify for Worlds many times over. And such a fun team, but we'll talk about that later. As, you know, Simone, this is her first year competing. She got top 4 at the regional championships in Malaysia. She got top 4 in the Singapore special event, which is essentially a regional championship. And This is probably her 3rd tournament, judging by the accomplishments.
Yeah, impressive accomplishments for the very first season of play, and also running a phenomenal team. I love that we're going to have a matchup between a Glaceon and a Butterfree. It's going to be super exciting. I can't wait to see this match get underway. But if you missed it, Justin is going to be running a Dusclops, Rhyperior, Snorlax, Glaceon, Torkoal, and Indeedee. While Simone, you can see on the screen there, is going to be running that Rotom Heat, the Excadrill, Tyranitar, Whimsicott, Gyarados, and Butterfree.
Also the G-Max factor on the Butterfree, which is pretty exciting. We've seen a lot of players in the older age divisions use it for an opportunity to maybe set up some Trick Room or otherwise spread status on the field when they don't have another Pokemon that can take that role. And I like it. I mean, it's definitely one of those Pokemon where you have to hope that you get the right status you need at the right time. As you may not know, G-Max Befuddle, which is the name of Butterfree's G-Max move, has an equal chance of activating Paralysis, Sleep, or Burn or Poison on the field. It can be any status, and that means you have to be prepared. You know, you have to be able to adjust. Maybe you get a Paralysis when you're really hoping for a Burn. But against Justin's team, you know, looking at the core, looking at the fact he has that Dusclops, that Rhyperior, that Snorlax, that Torkoal, that Indeedee, that is a Trick Room team. And
Absolutely.
If you look at the team, you know, you can see how the Trick Room part would make sense. And you might wonder, well, why the Glaceon? I actually have the inside details. The Glaceon not only is one of Justin's favorite Pokemon that he was very excited about bringing to this tournament, but he was really concerned about his matchup against Pokemon like Gastrodon and Pokemon like Dragovish, which are both, you know, water-type Pokemon. Glaceon gets access to Freeze Dry, which does super effective damage against that. So whether or not Glaceon will be on the field in this match is to be determined, but right now it looks like we're ready to get this showdown started.
Simone starting out with the Butterfree and the Tyranitar, and Justin starting out with the Dusclops and the Indeedee. Something that I'm really excited about is seeing that Indeedee set that Psychic Surge on the field.
It's going to be helpful for Justin just to block any threats of a fake out or otherwise priority moves. I think he was hoping to see that Whimsicott come out for Simone rather than the Butterfree, just because Whimsicott is the Pokemon that would be utilizing Prankster, would be using that priority that the Psychic Terrain would defend it against. The fact that Simone sent out Butterfree means that if she wants to, she can go for the Dynamax here, or Gigantamax here, and try and stop this Trick Room, but no Dynamax yet.
No, Butterfree just going to be going for that Sleep Powder, which is going to connect onto the Indeedee. Butterfree getting a chance to go for that Sleep Powder with high accuracy with the Compound Eyes. But look at this, going to be a Rock Slide very early on here from that Tyranitar. Dusclops flinches!
And this is how you stop Trick Room when you're facing the field across from a Follow Me user plus something like a Dusclops. You put it to sleep so that it can't go for a second Follow Me, and you hope that a flinch carries you through to the next turn. Now that Indeedee is guaranteed to be asleep this turn, this Butterfree can go ahead and target that Dusclops correctly with a second Sleep Powder. Now, Sleep Powder is not as accurate as some of the other moves that set sleep in this format, but Butterfree does have access to an ability called Compound Eyes, which will raise that accuracy. It's still not 100%, but it makes it a much more reliable strategy for situations just like this.
Well, that's going to force the Indeedee to come back to Justin and Rhyperior to come out in its place. Usually what we would consider a risky move, but Justin's considered a bit behind, but the Sleep Powder's going to connect onto the Dusclops again. If Justin was trying to go for a Trick Room, it can't go for that anymore.
And Tyranitar gets another Rock Slide into boot.
Yeah, wow. We won't even know whether or not that flinched, but it doesn't even matter. Dusclops is going to be fast asleep, was attempting to go for some type of move.
I wonder what Simone's going to do now, though. I think the Butterfree is safe to stay in and go for another Sleep Powder against that Rhyperior. We know it's going to be faster, but Tyranitar really needs to find a way to start dealing some damage. If it has access to a move like Crunch, attacking that Dusclops now might mean between the Crunch damage and the Sandstorm damage, it knocks it out, and then Justin won't have access to Trick Room for the rest of the game. But hey, if you're worried about damage output, why not Dynamax your Pokemon and just do a little bit extra on top of that?
Well, Tyranitar with the Sand set and no threat of that Trick Room for a while. Tyranitar will go for that Dynamax factor, and it's going to be larger than life on the field with Butterfree as its supporter by its side. Rhyperior going for the Protect. Just in case Tyranitar decides to go for a move into that slot, or the Sleep Powder from the Butterfree, so Rhyperior will get a chance to protect itself, but a Max Darkness is going to go right into the Dusclops and knock it out. No more Trick Room available for this game 1.
It's possible that, you know, Justin can find a way to win this game without the access to Trick Room, but he needs to find a way to stop this Butterfree from using Sleep Powder. Eventually, the Sandstorm damage could knock it out, but that's not going to happen in enough of a time frame. I think what Justin needs to do is either hope that this Indeedee will wake up. This is after that mandatory turn of sleep. It will be able to, if it can wake up, maybe it can go for something like a Follow Me to redirect the Sleep Powder away. Or just hope that this Rhyperior can find a way to, you know, weather these next few turns. Tyranitar doesn't have access to many moves that can hit that Rhyperior super effectively, and Simone might want to avoid that entirely given how many Rhyperior on Trick Room teams like to run something like Weakness Policy. So Justin still has a way to win this game, but without Trick Room, it's just going to be that much harder.
It's going to be a little bit harder, but Justin has to go for something here. Is going to take their chances by Dynamaxing the Rhyperior and seeing what they can get done outside of that Trick Room. More importantly, going to have access to double the HP, and Indeedee, unfortunately, still going to be asleep for this turn. Butterfree going for the Sleep Powder. It does connect into the Rhyperior, so Rhyperior going fastly to sleep after using all of that energy to Dynamax. Tyranitar now Max Rockfall. Let's see what it connects with. Will be that Indeedee, and with that such low HP, that's going to be an easy knockout for Simone.
To Justin's benefit, because the Butterfree moved before the Rhyperior had an option to attack, this was the turn of mandatory sleep. So Rhyperior does have a chance that it could wake up next turn, but again, that is just a chance. The thing about Butterfree that makes it so scary is that if you don't have a way to mitigate sleep or status, you know, you get into these situations where Butterfree is naturally faster than these Pokemon and can connect these Sleep Powders left and right. You know, Justin, I think he has a decent setup, again, to just try and stay in this. The Dynamax on the Tyranitar will expire after this turn, and Torkoal and Rhyperior are more than capable to knock out these Pokemon if given the opportunity, but he needs to go back to the drawing board and ensure that Butterfree just doesn't get these openings to just use Sleep Powder after Sleep Powder after Sleep Powder.
I think every Pokemon on Justin's side has gotten a chance to take a little bit of a nap here, but this Max Knuckle right into this Rhyperior is going to be super effective. And sure, it's going to boost the attack onto Simone's side of the field, but we'll see whether or not that Rhyperior is carrying that Weakness Policy, and there it is.
If Rhyperior wakes up this turn, that could be huge.
Oh, Rhyperior woke up! Rhyperior woke up, gonna get a chance to use a move, and it's gonna be that Max Rockfall right into the Butterfree. Butterfree gonna get knocked out. No more sleep for this game either.
Yeah, I don't think Rhyperior needed the extra damage from that Weakness Policy for that KO, but it is going to be such a powerful Pokemon for Justin now that it has managed to wake up. If it can connect an attack with this Tyranitar, especially after the Dynamax expires, it will most likely be a KO. Simone's going to have a Pokemon in the back that can really handle this Rhyperior very easily in order to win this game. You know, Gyarados is certainly a good Pokemon to start with. It does get access to Levitate, or it is levitating because it's a flying type Pokemon, so it won't be able to take damage from ground type attacks, but if Rhyperior goes for a second Rockfall, you know, that's going to be some super effective damage on it. The Intimidate does work in her favor, but she might have to switch this Gyarados out, try to get a second Intimidate down onto that Rhyperior so that the Weakness Policy isn't boosting its attack so sky high.
We'll see if that Gyarados does switch out, but instead it's going to go for a Protect. Simone wants to leave it on the field. Tyranitar also going for Protect just to stall out some of these Dynamax turns from Justin, and also some of the damage that's going to be coming out from these Max moves. So here's that Max Rockfall. Wasn't quite sure which Pokemon it was going to connect with, but it was going to be the Gyarados, and that's so powerful. Even with the Protect, it does so much damage. Torkoal stays asleep this turn.
Unfortunately, though, if Simone decides she wants to try and stall out the Dynamax on the Rhyperior, that is another turn of sleep that is stalled out for Justin. So now that Rhyperior has returned to its original size, you know, this might actually be a benefit for Justin. Assuming the Rock-type attack that Rhyperior has access to is Rock Slide, now that it is not Dynamax, it can easily target the Gyarados and the Tyranitar at the same time, do enough damage to pick up the KO on the Gyarados, do a little bit of damage to the Tyranitar, and then just hope that the Torkoal...
Look at that! That's so much damage from the waterfall. Rhyperior didn't even stand a chance. Tyranitar gets a chance to go for the rock slide as well. Torkoal not going to be able to take that either. Simone taking game 1.
What a way to end that game. You know, Gyarados is one of those Pokemon that, at least in the Masters division, you most commonly see with an item like an Assault Vest, and it usually isn't trained to take those big KOs. Instead, it's trained a little bit more defensively. That's probably an indication that Simone, you know, trained this Gyarados to be a counter to Rhyperior. That Waterfall was able to pick up the KO from about 75% on a normal-sized Rhyperior. So that is great information for her to know going into this game too, because looking at Justin's strategy, if he does decide to go with Trick Room again, I think that Rhyperior is still going to be a very tempting option. He does have access to the G-Max Snorlax that we saw on the team slide and with his accomplishments earlier, and that could be an adjustment for him, but that still is going to rely on Trick Room. He needs to find a way to break through the Butterfree, not just have his Pokemon be put to sleep before they can go for the Trick Room. And then once he has that speed advantage, you know, Rhyperior, Snorlax, Torkoal, all these very powerful, slow Pokemon will be able to pick up the momentum they need. But again, how do you avoid the Sleep Powder?
Oh, I'm so impressed with the way that Simone played those first couple of turns in that game 1, because it completely denied the Trick Room that Justin was trying to get set up. But I would also say that towards the mid to late game, Justin ended up pivoting and piloting the team expertly well to try to give themselves a chance in that matchup. Even around the sleep, they were capable of doing damage to that Butterfree and just removing that option entirely from Simone.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think the way that Justin should pivot going into this game is identical to how he pivoted in the middle of game 1.
Right.
Don't lead your Trick Room Pokemon. If you lead something like, I don't know, maybe Rhyperior or Torkoal, you could Rock Slide and maybe Eruption, and then you get 2 attacks off. The Butterfree's not going to be able to dodge both of them, and that should be the damage you need in order to pick up that KO, and then you can send Dusclops in later to set up that Trick Room. So I really like how Justin, like you said, recognized the fact that he needed to adjust his strategy in the middle of the game. And I think that gave himself a really good opening towards the end. I think he just needs to try and make that adjustment for this lead as well.
Well, it's going to be a bit of an interesting switch up here from Justin. No longer going to put the Dusclops on the field, but instead bringing the Rhyperior and the Indeedee like that game 1. The Indeedee's going to be back. And for Simone, same leads as game 1, that Tyranitar as well as that Butterfree.
But with the Indeedee next to the Rhyperior, the Indeedee can still go for a follow me, take the Sleep Powder away from the Butterfree, and then that Rhyperior is free to go on the offensive. Again, all it's going to take is one of these Rock Slides to knock out that Butterfree.
Yeah, Butterfree commonly ends up carrying something like a Focus Sash. So that's a possibility here. But with this sand up, that's a very difficult place for Simone to be in if it is indeed carrying that Focus Sash. But Justin's going on the offensive. Rhyperior is going to Dynamax turn 1 of this game. Larger than life, and making sure that this Butterfree's not going to be a big threat if it decides to target it down.
Also with the Tyranitar not Dynamaxing, that Rhyperior should be around for more than a few turns. You know, Tyranitar, again, is not known to be dealing big damage to a Pokemon like Rhyperior.
Wow, Butterfree classically going for that Sleep Powder, and Indeedee taking that one on the chin in Rhyperior's stead. Tyranitar going for the Rock Slide, but Rhyperior avoids the attack. Rhyperior is going to get a chance to fire off an attack, even though that does about half health to the Indeedee. Max Rockfall will be targeting down this Butterfree, and that's going to be a clean one-hit knockout. No Focus Sash there.
So that's an interesting thing to note. You have to wonder what that Butterfree is holding. We might be able to get back to it in game 3, but for now, Justin has managed to get rid of the Pokemon that caused him so much trouble in game 1. You know, I think that even though the speed on the field is still in Simone's favor, and this Gyarados is something that Justin really has to be careful around. You know, we saw Gyarados get the KO onto that Rhyperior after the Dynamax had expired. So at full health, you imagine that this Rhyperior should be able to take at least 1 attack from this Gyarados. Simone could always choose to Dynamax the Gyarados on her side of the field itself. You know, there also is an Intimidate in play. We haven't seen the weakness policy activate on that Rhyperior yet, but you know, Justin has found a way to just really completely change the board state from the beginning of this game too.
Yeah, Justin's in such a good position right now, and Simone going for the Dynamax. We'll have to wait and see what she decided to Dynamax. It's actually going to be the Tyranitar, not the Gyarados. And I actually think this is like a really good position for Simone to be in as well. It's going to be threatening quite a bit of damage to either of the Pokemon on the field.
And it resists most of the attacks that the Rhyperior has as well. So if the Rhyperior targeted this Gyarados, that's a perfect opening for this Tyranitar.
And Didi's still fast asleep. Tyranitar is going to move first with the Max Knuckle.
Oh,
the Max Knuckle is going to go right into the Rhyperior. And yes, it does. It will activate that weakness policy because of that super effective damage.
Gyarados will get an attack boost from that, though. Maybe that's what Simone needs in order to threaten this Rhyperior. Speed is still on her side. If she can attack with it the next turn, then that's, again, an opening.
Well, we saw how much this Max Rockfall did, even through the Protect. It's still going to be able to hang on, but it does even more damage than the last time we saw that move.
And it looks like this Gyarados is going to be within knockout range from the Sandstorm damage the next turn if this Rhyperior has something like a Max Guard. Now might be a good time for Justin to use it. You know, I love how he's changed up his strategy there. I think that this Rhyperior doesn't necessarily need Trick Room in order to excel in this matchup, and I think that's what's so cool about Justin's team and his playstyle right now.
Simone feels a little bit threatened by that Rhyperior at the moment, so a bit interesting adjustment on their part as well. Will be bringing in that Rotom Heat, but another Max Knuckle from this Tyranitar is simply going into the Rhyperior again, just trying to chip away at that damage, knowing that there's no threat of that weakness policy being procced again, because it's already there.
And the Tyranitar is at +2 attack itself now, but if Rhyperior targets this Max Quake into that Tyranitar, that's going to be some big damage.
Barely hangs on.
And Indeedee, I mean, it should be about time for Indeedee to wake up. Usually sleep only lasts for 4 turns, and I believe this was that last turn. Oh!
What is this?
+2 attack, my bad. I meant to say +4. That's a weakness policy on that Tyranitar.
That is a weakness policy there on that Tyranitar, and unfortunately, it will be able to take advantage of that next turn, but it's still super low in terms of its health pool.
It is. It will only need 1 hit to knock it out, but the combination of the Rotom and the Tyranitar dealing damage next turn, I mean, a Rock Slide would certainly knock out Indeedee from that range, and you have to imagine it'd be dealing some big damage to that Rhyperior, or Max Rockfall, excuse me. You know, so I think as long as Simone is able to target the Pokemon that she wants to in the next turn, or at least play around the fact that this Indeedee most likely will wake up and go for a follow me here, you know, she's still in a good spot, but this is Justin's opportunity to make a comeback.
Justin Indeedee going for the follow me, but the Rotom using Ally Switch.
No!
Oh no! Is this going to catch Justin off guard? Because Tyranitar going for the Max Knuckle at that +4 will be going into Indeedee just to make sure that it gets knocked out from the follow me there. Okay.
No, that Tyranitar is at +5.
But yeah, that Tyranitar is at +5.
Tyranitar.
Rhyperior going for the Rock Slide though. Didn't get caught by the Ally Switch at all. Gets the double knockout.
Where there is a Rock Slide, there is a way. Being able to attack both the Pokemon there and recognizing the threat of the Ally Switch from that Rotom, just really paying off for Justin. Simone is down to her last Pokemon in the form of that Gyarados, and unfortunately for Gyarados, even though the Intimidate will bring that Rhyperior back down to neutral attack, Glaceon has one purpose on Justin's team other than being his favorite Pokemon. It's to deal super effective damage to water-type Pokemon like Gyarados. So Justin doing an amazing job of recognizing that he didn't need Trick Room in this matchup, and able to pick up the KO on that Gyarados and bring us into a Game 3.
We have been rewarded with 2 Game 3 sets so far for the Championship Sunday of the 2020 Pokemon Oceania International Championships. It all comes down to this last game again.
And it is going to be a really interesting game because I think Simone was hoping to see, you know, another Trick Room setup from Justin there. I love the Tyranitar and the Butterfree working together, but I don't think she was able to utilize the Butterfree as effectively as she had in past games, just because Justin was able to play around the threat of the Sleep Powder. And unfortunately, I think Butterfree is a Pokemon that, you know, you want to be as disruptive as possible, and as a result, if you can't go for those Sleep Powders, if your Pokemon gets knocked out within the early turns of the game, you know, it might be better to leave it behind. You know, I love the Gyarados and the Tyranitar Tyranitar and the Rotom Heat on her team, even though we only saw the ally switch reveal from Rotom. I think if she decides to leave Butterfree behind and maybe bring a Pokemon like that Excadrill that we saw in Team Preview, you know, that would be enough power on her side of the field to sort of play around Justin's strategy, regardless if he decides to go for Trick Room or not. That being said, though, you know, Justin definitely has an advantage going into this team preview just because, you know, he does have the option of running Trick Room or going for a Trick Room-less strategy. And given the powerful Pokemon that he has on his side of the field with that Rhyperior, that Glaceon, you know, those are going to be things that Simone really has to be careful about. And I think that's why a strategy like Justin's, you know, that relies so heavily on Trick Room can be successful in this format. You do need to know how to position yourself and know how to play it correctly. But, you know, Justin, you know, he's a champion. He's the incoming Oceania International Champion. He knows how to play that positioning. And, you know, I can't wait to see how these trainers are going to approach this Game 3 because they've been playing so incredibly well so far.
I mean, I think the adjustments that Justin made in that Game 2 really speak to the level of trainer that they are. I mean, it just kind of backs up the resume, right? But alongside that, Simone, their first season playing Pokemon, has shown us some incredible heads-up play as well in terms of that Game 1, just ensuring that that Trick Room wasn't going to be a threat. But here we go with this Game 3. It's about time to get it underway. And it's going to be a similar strategy to what we saw in Game 2. Justin feels like that was the play, and that's what's going to work, and Simone's still confident in that strategy as well.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what Simone has in mind. I don't think you go for the Sleep Powder onto the Indeedee here unless you're planning on trying to keep Butterfree safe in another way. Of course, this Tyranitar has access to Rock Slide, and we did see a flinch come into play early on in Game 1. But if Justin decides to Dynamax that Rhyperior, it will not be able to flinch. So I think she has to learn from what she saw in Game 1 and assume that if it is going to be a Follow Me followed by a Dynamax, you have to keep that Butterfree safe for later when Dynamax isn't an option. But it looks like the adjustment was made, and it's actually Whimsicott coming out for her.
Interesting play here.
And a Dynamax as well.
Yeah, we are going to see a turn 1 Dynamax, which is different than what we saw in Game 2. So going right away on the offensive, but also preserving that Butterfree for later in case there is something like a Trick Room setter in the back for Justin. But Whimsicott being on the field is going to be able to take some of these attacks just a little bit better, but Justin's going for the Dynamax as well, and we can only make an educated guess as to what this Pokemon's going to be.
It's indeed, no, it's actually Rhyperior, just kidding. But no, I think Rhyperior is definitely one of the Pokemon that you want to be consistently Dynamaxing in this format. It's just so good.
Absolutely. We've seen how powerful this Rhyperior can be when it gets a chance to go for the weakness policy. But Indeedee, follow me. It wants to be that center of attention. It's going to take this Max Knuckle really well.
But that won't activate the weakness policy on the Rhyperior, which I think is the key thing to notice here. And hypothetically, if this Rhyperior targeted that Butterfree slot, it's now a Whimsicott. So really just an interesting sort of turn of events. I'm not quite sure what this Whimsicott is going to do. I think with the combination of that damage and the Sandstorm that's currently active on the field, it's mostly there to protect the Butterfree. But this is a really interesting opportunity for Simone. Her Tyranitar is at +1 attack. The Indeedee is within range of a KO from a second attack. Maybe you send in the Gyarados, get a nice Intimidate down, protect. Maybe you send in the Butterfree, and you know we've only seen it use Sleep Powder. If it has access to another attack that can KO the Indeedee, it's possible that a +1 Max Knuckle from that Tyranitar will deal some big damage to the Rhyperior.
Well, Indeedee is going to use Follow Me again, just trying to protect its partner Rhyperior for another turn, but Butterfree will unfortunately be going to use that Sleep Powder right into the Indeedee, putting it to sleep, and now it's time for Tyranitar to make a move. Max Knuckle again, but because this Indeedee ended up utilizing that Follow Me, it's going to have to take that Max Knuckle, and it will get the knockout and the attack boost, but Rhyperior is free to make another attack.
It's free to make another attack because Tyranitar is at +2. If the Rhyperior targets that Tyranitar with an attack, it's the possibility of the weakness policy.
Oh no!
Yeah, I like how Justin went for the KO on Butterfree here again. You know, it caused him so much trouble in Game 1. I think that just removing it from the field and really bringing Simone down to her last 2 Pokemon is key to his strategy moving forwards. That being said, you know, speed is currently still in Simone's favor. You know, it's true that Justin has that Glaceon against the Gyarados on his side of the field, but that Tyranitar is still at full health as well. So Simone, even though she is down to her last 2 Pokemon, you know, she certainly has a ton of options here to play out the field. Dynamax is going to expire for that Rhyperior in 1 more turn. So if she can maybe stall out the remainder of Dynamax, find a way to remove that Glaceon on the field before it can threaten her Gyarados too much, you know, she might be able to find an opening here. We don't know what Justin's last Pokemon is. If it's something like that Torkoal, without Trick Room, you know, it's going to be KO'd quite easily by this Tyranitar.
Well, protect first from the Gyarados. Glaceon going for the Ice Shard.
Oh, to
but
activate
it's right
the
into the Rhyperior to activate the weakness policy. That was a side Ice Shard.
That was so smart of Justin.
Wow, and preserving that knowledge for this game 3. Max Knuckle right into the Rhyperior. Is it going to be enough to knock it out? So that weakness policy is procced, and Rhyperior is going to get a chance to attack.
I mean, we've seen this Max Rockfall deal so much damage through the Protect onto that Gyarados. It's most likely going to be within range of Ice Shard, knocking it out again after this big attack. Okay, a little less damage than last time, but still, Ice Shard priority attack with the Sandstorm damage, it probably will be enough. And just like that, you know, Simone's Dynamax has expired, and the Rhyperior's Dynamax has expired. You know, we are getting down to the wire, and these next couple of turns, it's possible even this turn will determine who is our junior Oceania International Champion.
Tyranitar still is faster than the Rhyperior, and it does have a couple of those attack boosts, so it's not over quite yet, but that Glaceon's threatening a lot onto that Gyarados.
And that Tyranitar still has a weakness policy of its own.
Yeah, it does. It will not be activated quite yet. Glaceon going for the Ice Shard right into the Gyarados. Just going to be normal damage, so it's not going to be too much, but the Power Whip actually goes into the Glaceon.
Does a little bit of damage.
Yeah, a good read, though, by Simone to go for the Glaceon instead of the Rhyperior. Absolutely. Citrus Berry to restore a lot of that power, but Super Power right into the Rhyperior. Rhyperior going to protect itself, and Gyarados getting buffeted by that Sandstorm makes it
not
so
enough to knock it out.
It still hangs on, though.
But Simone could decide to protect it here, which will give her Tyranitar another opportunity to attack. I mean, Justin can try and predict that, but if he doubles into that Tyranitar and the Gyarados doesn't protect, that can be huge as well. So Simone is definitely still within this game, and that Tyranitar is still a big threat to Justin.
But the Glaceon going for the Ice Shard is going to knock out the Gyarados before it's able to do another attack this turn. It's just a Tyranitar left, but it's going for a Rock Slide.
All right, let's see
whether or
how
not it
this
gets
does.
the flinches. Ooh, well, Glaceon's going to get knocked out here. Rhyperior not super effective, but we'll see whether or not it can get an attack off.
I think the flinch is what you have to hope for here.
Oh no, it uses the Rock Slide.
Or a miss.
No miss here. Tyranitar is going to have to take that one, but Tyranitar still gets a chance to attack one more time. Let's see what this last Pokemon is for Justin.
If it is that Torkoal, a Rock Slide with the attack boost on that Tyranitar should be enough to pick up that knockout, which means Rhyperior could be close, but instead, knowing that Justin's last Pokemon is going to be the Dusclops, Simone has a very difficult decision. She can go for a Dark type attack into that Dusclops and pick up the KO, but then Rhyperior is free to knock out her Tyranitar. If Justin doesn't protect the Rhyperior and she misses the opportunity to attack into it, that could be huge. Here we go.
Tyranitar uses Crunch. She calls the Protect. Gets the KO.
Simone reading that perfectly, predicting that Protect on the Rhyperior, and she just needs to find a way to knock out this Rhyperior, and she will be the next champion. This is down to the absolute wire.
Tyranitar going for the superpower right into the Rhyperior, and it's enough to get the knockout. Congratulations to Simone, our next Oceania International Champion.
The crowd is going wild, but Simone is just there happily smiling, getting a hug from her friend. Congratulations to both of these trainers. It came down to the absolute wire. Just that one turn, predicting the Protect from Justin, predicting the Protect from such a seasoned Pokemon player. You know, Justin just had the perfect board state, but Simone able to recognize that one step ahead. Such an incredibly close game. My voice is cracking because that's how good that was.
That's just the next generation of Pokemon trainers.
I don't want to battle them.
That Simone, this is their very first season playing Pokemon.
Her
And
very first international championship.
yeah, their very first international that they've competed in, first international championship. What
that
more
is
are we going to
incredible.
see from this trainer? I mean, there's so much to break down in that last series, that last game specifically. Justin had everything there, but that last turn, I can't believe it came down to the wire like that.
And Justin made the perfect adjustment too, going from game 2 into game 3, recognizing that having Trick Room for later was the better strategy, knowing that Simone would probably rely on that Butterfree. So just really well played, really well executed from both these trainers. I know we're going to be seeing more from Justin because he's competing in a regional championship next weekend, actually.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. So, I mean, what a way to go into that tournament. Just, oh yeah, I got second in Oceania. Now I'm here ready to just, kick butt, take names, all that fun stuff. Justin, certainly a trainer to keep an eye on. So incredibly well played. But Simone, I love her team. I loved how calm and collected she stayed throughout that entire match. How
Absolutely.
exciting was that?
We have a changing of the guard here at Oceania International Championships. I mean, it's not often that you get a chance to see a defending champ come back and
make it to the finals.
Make it to the finals, absolutely. This was just an incredible series. We've been so excited all day. We've just had some great Pokemon to watch all day. We've had 2 best-of-3 series go to a game 3. We still have one more.
I was going to say, I mean, you say it's not common to have an incoming Oceania International Champion to defend their title, but we got 2 of them coming up today. So.
We do, but for now, the next thing that we have on the docket is going to be an interview with Simone on stage, our brand new Juniors International Champion.
Thank you very much. I am joined by Simone, the winner of the International Championships here in the Juniors division in one of the most exhilarating sets we've ever seen in Juniors history. First of all, Simone, congratulations. How do you feel?
Happy.
Happy indeed. You played so well. You didn't give in to the pressure. Were you nervous after the first or after you lost that second round?
I was nervous after I lost the second round.
But you played so well in that final game. You made the prediction to go for the crunch onto Dusclops. How did you know that was the right play to make?
Because I know that he's going to protect the Rhyperior.
You were right. You protected the Rhyperior, and you got the knockout. You played so well. I think you were a fan favorite. Everyone was just so happy to see you perform well. So, do you have any thank yous to say to the people that were supporting you?
Well, my friends and my family and my coach.
I'm sure they're all very, very proud of you. Truly a tremendous performance, and you have so many fans out there supporting you. So, Simone, congratulations once again on an amazing victory. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
All right, you heard it from the champion herself. Thank you, guys. And when we're back, we'll be back here with the Masters Finals.
I love probably the fact that I get to play with my mates.
I think it's how you're able to meet people and how you're able to connect with people regardless of where you're from. Like, I've met so many different people from different countries, places, and getting to know them and just being more involved in the scene has been like really fun.
Just the community of people. Like, I have friends from Malaysia, America. My Portuguese mate stayed over at my house last year for the event. That's the kind of like community you get.
My favorite Pokemon would have to be Litten or Litleo, because I love cats.
Weeveltal. I used it all of Ultra Series, and I love the Pokemon. I think it looks awesome.
My favorite Pokemon is Blastoise, and he's just got cannons. He's really cool. You can't go wrong.
I've been playing for a few years now.
I played at the Oceanics in 2017.
My first event was really in 2009, but I didn't travel for events until 2015, and that's kind of what I consider my start.
battle with right now is probably, I'm using Obstagoon.
I would have to say Excadrill, really, because it's Focus Sash and all the other things that you can have with it.
Evaltal, again. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot.
Oh, baby, we are back at the 2020 Oceania International Championships in Melbourne, Australia. It is time. It is Championship Sunday. My name is Evan Latt, and I am so stoked to be behind the desk with you, Aaron, for this last match of the entire tournament. Championship Sunday has been so hype. I can't wait to see how we close it out.
Those juniors and seniors finals were legitimately some of the best finals I've ever seen, and I expect the Masters finals to live up to those. I mean, seriously, such great play from our younger competitors so far throughout the course of this day, and I'm so excited for this Masters matchup. Eduardo Cunha, of course, the defending champion from this tournament, one of, if not the best player in the world, and definitely one of the most consistent players from the last couple of years. He has had a tremendous tournament run using really cool Pokemon, of course, like that Gourgeist, but his opponent, Marco, the #1 seed, going into this top 8 bracket, exhilarating victories across the entire board, and he's played tremendously with his Whimsicott Duraludon team, and of course, got to talk about that Dracovish.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of these players have been playing so well throughout the tournament. They both have lots of fans here in the stadium. If you want to cheer on your favorite competitor, make sure you take to the internet. Use the hashtag #PlayPokemon. Follow us on twitter.com/playpokemon. Check out some of those sick highlights from our previous championship matches as well. Join the community on facebook.com/Pokemon. Catch up on all of the action on YouTube, youtube.com/Pokemon. And of course, instagram.com/Pokemon for scenes from the event. And I just cannot wait to get into this finals matchup. Eduardo has been having such a great tournament. The defending Oceania champion, proving why he is a threat in the Sword and Shield metagame. But like you mentioned, Marco, no slouch himself, having a dominant run through Swiss to finish as the first seed in our top cut bracket, defeating his opponents along the way with a team that we already saw make the finals once before.
Yeah, and I think the dynamic of this matchup is really interesting because when we saw that seniors finals, we saw just how tough it can be to use Dracovish when you're going up against a Gastrodon team. And guess what we have in the finals here again,
Gastrodon.
There's a Dracovish on Marco's team, and it's time for the slug and on Eduardo's end. And so it's so interesting because Dracovish is one of those Pokemon that can really just get one-hit knockouts on so many different Pokemon if there is no Pokemon like Gastrodon. But Gastrodon can redirect all of those attacks away, and so I think that we'll have to see if that interaction comes out once again, because that was actually a really, really critical element in the seniors finals, where I think if you're not able to knock out the Gastrodon, then Dracovish probably just wins. But the thing is, it's very difficult to knock out Gastrodon, especially when a smart player is going to switch it out and conserve it, specifically to deal with Dracovish.
Absolutely. Before we get into match, let's check out the path that both of our players took to get here. As you can see, it's the #1 seed up against the #3 seed here in the finals. Marco defeating Eric Rios in the top 8 match, defeating Raghav Malavia in the top 4 match, and Eduardo Cunha taking on Brady Smith in the top 8, and then Nihal Noor in his top 4 match to qualify for his 2nd finals in a row here in Melbourne.
I think my favorite thing about this and this top 8 bracket is that both of our finalists, won in grueling best-of-3 sets in both top 8 and top 4.
It was a long top cut bracket.
Exactly. It wasn't like, just an easy 2-0. And if anything, those sets showed how good they can adapt and how they can figure out, how to really win in a format as advanced as this VGC 2020 format. So I am super excited to see how this matchup plays out, specifically because we've already seen their teams a fair amount, but there's so many cool elements of each team, and I think one thing that both players are really good at doing is being able to choose when to Dynamax your Pokemon and not necessarily just aggressively go on the first turn with Dynamax. Like, we saw Eduardo play really interestingly yesterday. For example, he brought Durant, which is obviously one of the more standout Pokemon on his team, kind of used it as fodder and didn't even Dynamax it early on, specifically so he could set up the Togekiss that he had Dynamax in the back. And for Marco's end, he's got so many strong Pokemon that can Dynamax. I think everything bar the Whimsicott is something that you could really see Dynamaxing. So we're going to take a look at our 2 finalists here, 2 of the best players definitely at this tournament and in the world.
Yeah, our finalists are on stage and getting ready to get into battle here. Marco Silva versus Eduardo Cunha. It's going to be an amazing finals here. I can't wait to see how these 2 players match up against each other.
Yeah, and the dynamic of this matchup is also pretty interesting. Once again, Marco running these kind of like Tailwind strategy that has been quite popular, using Whimsicott instead of Tailwind. Use fake tiers and you just get all these special defense drops and everything, whereas Eduardo's actually not running that fake tiers. And we're going to take a quick look at Marco's player profile.
Here is Marco. As you can see, he's already had a pretty good 2020 season, scoring a top 16 finish at the Latin American International Championships earlier this cycle. Of course, that was back on our previous format. Now here in the Sword and Shield format, a finals appearance means that he is here to play for the rest of the season and challenge for that Worlds invite in London.
Of course, his team, kind of a mid-tier speed team where you have Pokemon that are not exactly the fastest, but supported by Whimsicott's Tailwind, really will just be able to outspeed everything. He's going up against none other than Eduardo Cunha, the defending champion of this tournament. He got top 4 at his very first World Championship back in 2016, got top 16 at this most recent World Championships. I think has been a standout player in this format as well. He actually top cut that very first regionals over in Bochum over in January, and here he is with what I think is a really interesting team as well. You've got Durant and you've got Gourgeist, 2 Pokemon that definitely aren't used by a lot of trainers.
Yeah, an established and decorated player. Of course, the defending Oceania International Champion. Really interesting matchup here, like you mentioned, what we saw in that seniors finals, having the Dracovish against the Gastrodon. Eduardo bringing Gastrodon, we saw how important it was for him in previous matches. Staring down the Dracovish, you have to imagine it's even more important to protect the Sea Slug.
Yeah, and both players have pretty different teams if you look at it across the board. And I think one thing that I am especially curious about is who these trainers will opt to Dynamax, because as we've seen throughout the course of the tournament, they're very flexible who they want to Dynamax. But Durant is a Pokemon I definitely have my eye out on because it has a pretty good offensive matchup against a lot of Pokemon like Whimsicott, like Duraludon. You protect it with Gastrodon next to it, and Dracovish can't really do very much next to it as well. So for Eduardo's end, I kind of expect to see Durant and Gastrodon in combination, definitely as a strategy to sweep through, at least in one of the games. And for Marco's end, you do have the option to set up Tailwind with Whimsicott. There isn't anything that can really deny that. For example, no fake out from Eduardo's end. So you can just kind of sweep through, get the Tailwind off. Something like Duraludon can Dynamax, of course, do a lot of damage. Max Steel Spike gets really good coverage, but the thing about Dynamaxing Duraludon in this matchup is you have to worry about Dynamax Gastrodon, which is certainly a possibility. And even Durant, Max Quake, especially supported by, just a little bit of chip damage, can't get that knockout into Duraludon.
And if you do go for the Tailwind option, you have to be careful about that Gourgeist on Eduardo's side. Has the Trick Room option as well, and a Pokemon like Gastrodon loves to play around in that Trick Room.
Absolutely. I think Tyranitar is an interesting decision here. You actually could justify bringing it despite so many major threats like Conkeldurr and Dracovish, mainly because it's immune to that fake tears, but I think Eduardo might prioritize it a little bit less. But at the end of the day, these players have shown that they really have so much knowledge and they're so flexible with their team. So I'm so excited to see how this first game goes.
Here we go. Game 1 of the Masters Finals. Gastrodon and Arcanine leading for Eduardo, while Marco has opted to go with the Duraludon and the Whimsicott lead. Very common leads that we've seen in the past. Use that fake tears to give huge boost to Duraludon in the Dynamax.
Yeah, so Arcanines typically will outspeed Duraludon, so Arcanine in this position I think is often going to want to maybe click something like Snarl just to decrease that special attack. And Gastrodon here could actually consider Dynamax. If you Dynamax the Gastrodon, you can immediately get some special defense boosts. Here we go. It's going to be a Dynamax to kick off this battle.
Yeah, nothing like a turn 1 Dynamax to kick off the Masters Finals. And it's the Slug. It's Gastrodon Dynamaxing, so Marco not opting to Dynamax the Duraludon this time around. Keeping that Dynamax option, going to have to try and stall out the big Slug here. Whimsicott goes for the fake tears, going to be able to deal a lot of damage on one of these Pokemon. Targets the Arcanine, actually, recognizing that you want to get that Snarl off the field as soon as possible. The special attack drop on Duraludon going to make sure that it is much less effective than it would have been before, but if it still targets down that Arcanine, it still counts as having a few boosts here, as the Draco Meteor will connect.
Draco Meteor will connect, and let's see if it's enough to pick up the knockout. It hangs on! Clutch survival there.
10 hit points.
Oh my goodness, and Gastrodon presumably will go for something like a Max Quake. Goes in that Duraludon, you get a special defense boost as well from that, and there's the Max Quake coming out.
Max Quake from Gastrodon, connecting with Duraludon, hitting it on its weaker defense there, the special defense, and picks up the KO. Duraludon not Dynamaxing, so much squishier on that specially defensive side without the Dynamax.
Yeah, this is an Assault Vest Duraludon too, but you can see the weakness of Duraludon even with the Assault Vest, not able to survive there. Excellent Snarl by Eduardo turn 1, and I think that play covered all of his options there. So Conkeldurr is going to switch in. That's why I was saying I think Gastrodon's a really great Pokemon in this matchup beforehand. What do you really have to deal with it in terms of damage, especially a Dynamax Gastrodon? Maybe some fighting type attacks from Conkeldurr or Sylveon Hyper Voices, but after you get a couple special defense boosts, it's pretty much down to the physical type attackers. So I think Eduardo's goal right now is to prioritize knocking out this Conkeldurr. Gastrodon won't be able to get a one-hit KO on either of these two Pokemon, but I think really content to just click something like a Max Geyser or a Max Quake. Arcanine here can even stay in, go for example, a fire type attack into that Whimsicott. So
get the Tailwind pressure off the field.
Exactly, yeah, and for Marco, maybe you're content trading Tailwind for a lot of damage here, and I think Tailwind is probably a necessity for the late game here because Eduardo just has so much strong Pokemon right now.
Okay, well Arcanine switching out to protect itself for Togekiss, going to preserve the fire type attacks and the Snarls and the Intimidate if it is that Dracovish in the back. May need it if Marco is able to punch through the Gastrodon by using this Dynamax Conkeldurr. Will be able to use its Max Knuckle to give itself some boosts in addition to a Guts boost once its Flame Orb activates. Whimsicott will be able to set up the Tailwind here, so giving a speed boost to the entire team, and actually just going for the Max Hailstorm, catches Togekiss on the switch. Big damage, not quite enough to pick up the KO, but that's a lot of damage.
That's a really, really good prediction there. Realizes that Eduardo's going to probably want to cycle in that Intimidate. Max Quake will come out, but it's not really going to do very much damage, especially against the Dynamax Conkeldurr.
Yeah, Conkeldurr takes actually a pretty good amount of damage there from the Max Quake. Like you mentioned, though, the Gastrodon going to continue to just boost the special defense. So if the Sylveon's in the back, Marco's not going to be able to deal too much damage to that Gastrodon.
Huge prediction there, though. I mean, Arcanine was already pretty low. I'm not sure a Max Hailstorm would have knocked out Arcanine in the range it was in. So once again, that's a really great read because if Marco just goes for the Max Knuckle, which you might be tempted to go for, then Togekiss survives that pretty easily. You can go for, follow me this next turn. However, Togekiss does survive. The main thing is that a Whimsicott attack such as a Moonblast will be able to probably pick up the knockout. So right now, you could safely go for something like Moonblast into Togekiss and then just go for Max Knuckle into the Gastrodon. And even getting a single attack boost on Dynamax Conkeldurr is a big deal.
Yeah, and crucially, the Flame Orb activated at the end of that turn as well. So Conkeldurr getting the Guts boost. will help it negate this Intimidate coming out from Arcanine on the switch-in. So Eduardo trying to fight back and reduce some of the damage coming out from Marco's side. Arcanine able to tank that Moonblast because it is a resisted hit. Just a little bit of damage while Conkeldurr is opting to go for Max Knuckles. Ooh. Actually double targeting the Togekiss slot. So we'll pick up the KO onto Arcanine. No more Intimidate pressure coming out, and an attack boost to negate that Intimidate entirely.
Yeah, so doubling up onto the Togekiss there, basically covering for any switch-ins. Basically, with that play, if Togekiss switches in, or stays in, you get the knockout, and your Max Knuckles getting redirected towards Conkeldurr. Actually, after, the 2 Max Quakes and Burn and Hail damage is
good damage.
It is really good damage, and of course it's not that Assault Vest Conkeldurr that we often see because the Assault Vest is on the Duraludon on this team. So Gastrodon so far really hasn't taken any damage, and like you said, that Intimidate will basically mitigate the attack boost that came from that Max Knuckle.
And Tailwind's still up, so Conkeldurr is going before the Gastrodon, has another opportunity to pick up a KO on these Pokemon before the Tailwind ends.
Is going to be Tyranitar as that 4th option, though. So Conkeldurr has a pretty optimal matchup against Gastrodon and Tyranitar, especially because Gastrodon no longer is Dynamaxed. And Whimsicott can still go for some solid damage with something like a Moonblast. Might want to consider switching out as well. One thing I have to wonder is the last Pokemon on Marco's end that Dracovish? Because if it is, as soon as you knock out Gastrodon, Dracovish theoretically should win.
Oof. Even if you're able to get Gastrodon low, we've seen that Dracovish is no slouch even when just using something like a Crunch to deal some damage. But Sylveon's actually the final Pokemon, so all of those Max Quake boosts are going to make it much more difficult for Marco to break through Gastrodon. Tyranitar just trying to protect itself for this final turn of Dynamax from the Conkeldurr.
Was it targeting? Oh, goes into Tyranitar!
Into the Protect. Tyranitar still 4 times weak, but because of the Protect, not going to take the maximum amount of damage. Conkeldurr gets off the attack there. Another attack boost activates the weakness policy from Tyranitar. Now Gastrodon's going to be able to get off an attack, and soon this Tailwind is going to expire as well as the Conkeldurr's Dynamax, which is actually really good for Marco.
Yeah, and I think Sylveon, an excellent 4th Pokemon to have out here, especially with Spread Hyper Voice. He's able to chip away enough at the Gastrodon at this point, and that's does so much damage to Tyranitar even through the Protect. So Sylveon exerting an immense amount of pressure right now with Hyper Voice. Like Togekiss in the back won't be able to do that much damage, especially without the ability to Dynamax. And Marco actually conserved his Whimsicott, so he could still set up a Tailwind later on once Conkeldurr faints here. So I think Marco is actually in a tremendous position, and this is one of the reasons why Conkeldurr has been such a high priority pick throughout the course of this metagame, specifically for its ability to deal with Tyranitar, because you pressure with Mach Punch even after Tailwind, for example, expires. So right now I think Marco can definitely click the Hyper Voice button with Sylveon. He has a bunch of decisions to go with Conkeldurr. Can maybe swap out back into the Whimsicott, or maybe you just sacrifice it here so you get a free switch and back into the Whimsicott and get another Tailwind off and close the game off with Whimsicott and Sylveon.
All right, Marco having to decide an endgame here. Eduardo just going to protect Gastrodon from any damage coming out from Marco's side, like that Hyper Voice from Sylveon. So the Hyper Voice connects on to the Tyranitar, which took all the damage from Max Knuckle earlier, easily able to pick up that KO. So Conkeldurr sticking around this turn. The Protect prevent... Oh! The side Drain Punch to survive the Sand and Burn damage here. So Conkeldurr gets to survive for a few more turns. Yo, that was good.
Yeah, but that's so much damage on the Sylveon now, and Eduardo does have the Togekiss. We know it's the Scope Lens Super Lux set as well, so we'll have to see how fast the Sylveon is relative to this Togekiss. I mean, it is super low, so if you have the priority, like a Quick Attack, for example, maybe a Quick Attack and a Mach Punch will be able to get the knockout. I don't think a Mach Punch from Conkeldurr is knocking out Togekiss. Not even sure a Quick Attack from Sylveon is able to pick up that knockout.
It's gotten a lot of Max Knuckle boosts.
That's true, yeah.
And its guts. You saw how much damage it did to Sylveon.
It did a lot of damage to Sylveon, that is correct. So we'll have to see. I mean, that is a clever way, and self-targeting obviously is not a very, very common attack. Togekiss is obviously heavily damaged, so it is pretty close to getting knocked out. Oh, it's going to be a close finish, but I think Marco still has the advantage right now. And we know that the Togekiss here doesn't have Protect, so you can freely target that slot. I think Gastrodon's obviously going to be attacking, even though they didn't Protect. And Conkeldurr going for a Protect here.
Okay, Conkeldurr did all of that work to heal back up.
Sylveon's faster.
Sylveon's faster than the Togekiss, though, so Hyper Voice picks up the KO, and that's a lot of damage with a critical hit onto Gastrodon through all of those Max Quake boosts. Eduardo goes for the Scald, connects with the Sylveon, so able to pick up the KO there after Sand here.
it's a big deal that the Sylveon there is faster than the Togekiss, though, naturally. And maybe that was information that the players already knew going into this. So, yeah, hey, self-Drain Punch there, definitely a cool play. I think it actually makes a lot of sense in so many different ways, too, because, like, you can eventually, if one thing gets knocked out, you can get the switch into Whimsicott and just set up a Tailwind there. But yeah, the fact that the Sylveon there is able to just outspeed Togekiss, get that Hyper Voice off, now you can very safely click Tailwind, Whimsicott, Drain Punch, and a Gastron. The game is just over. So really, really interesting and cool plays from both ends, I think, in this game. And Marco made some phenomenal predictions, especially the Max Hailstorm into the Togekiss, and you see the power of Conkeldurr. That's one of the reasons why earlier I was saying maybe Tyranitar is a little weak in this matchup, but let's see if Gastron can maybe stall out the the Conkeldurr right now.
Actually didn't go for the Tailwind here, just the Fake Tears and Drain Punch. Both of those into Gastrodon's Protect here. So should Eduardo go for the double Protect here, would be able to pick up the KO on Conkeldurr, unless it goes for another side Drain Punch, which might buy a little bit more time.
Yeah,
tough call here. This is actually a weird position to be in.
Yeah, it's like definitely a potential play to make, but like if you side Drain Punch yourself, you like crit the Whimsicott, you knock yourself out, that would be a disaster. But Gastron goes for the double. Do we see another side? Let's see. It's going to be Fake Tears to kick things off.
Yeah, Whimsicott gets the Fake Tears off onto the Gastrodon. Does not get the double Protect, so Drain Punch connecting to Gastrodon will pick up that KO. Marco is going to get a Game 1 victory here, using the big brain plays to keep that Conkeldurr alive and firing off against that Gastrodon.
That was so cool. And you know, when he first went for that play, I was like a little bit nervous because I was like, there is an offensive Togekiss in the back. If that is faster, I mean, maybe you can just start doing some damage. But key thing here is in the end, Sylveon was able to outspeed that Togekiss, able to get that Hyper Voice off. So really cool play there from Marco. I think I like the approach Eduardo went in this game with as well. But you see where Gastron kind of falls off a little bit. I think Conkeldurr has proven its damage output against Eduardo's entire team. And that's kind of why before we started this match, I was thinking Durant could be a really interesting pick because if you Dynamax it, even if you're not getting KOs, you can get some Max Steel Spike boosts, get those defense boosts, which helps out immensely against Conkeldurr. So I think for Eduardo's end, you might want to consider bringing in that Durant and Dynamaxing it in the second matchup. I also think Tyranitar really didn't provide that much value in that last game, and the main reason is because Conkeldurr just pressures it so much the entire time. So
especially Dynamax.
Exactly. So Eduardo needs to go back to the drawing board, consider how do I beat a Dynamax Conkeldurr, because that's a Pokemon that, you know, I think on these team compositions like Duraludon's off the Dynamax, you saw Marco made a really smart play on that first turn, choosing not to Dynamax that Duraludon. You can see like he clearly had a kind of a long-term game plan in the set.
All right, well, Eduardo is the defending international champion, so if he knows how to come back, if anyone knows how to come back from a deficit, it's him. He's going to have his work cut out for him. Falling in Game 1, going to need to make some big plays here to advance to a Game 3 and keep the tournament hopes alive. Otherwise, Marco will be taking home the championship title here. And really importantly, that last game, the Dracovish did not come out.
Yeah.
Of course, seeing that Gastrodon on Eduardo's side makes it very difficult to bring that Pokemon. So Marco deciding, I'm not even going to worry about trying to play around the Gastrodon with my Dracovish. I have other win conditions. I'm not going to worry about it.
And I think Sylveon was an immensely clutch pick there in the end, able to get spread Hyper Voices off against all these things that really don't resist it. So it also speaks to why I would like to see Durant in this matchup, given Marco's heavy prioritization towards Whimsicott, Duraludon, Conkeldurr, and Sylveon. If you look at it, I mean, Durant has a really good matchup against all of that, actually. So we'll see if Marco makes the prediction, expects Edu to maybe bring the Durant and switches things up by perhaps bringing in the Rotom Heat. Oh my goodness, though. Those were some really cool plays, I think, from both ends. I mean, we have to point out Marco going for the Max Hailstorm prediction on the Togekiss switch in, and of course the self-Drain Punch, but I think Eduardo going for some really safe and consistent plays earlier on, but in the end, it felt like Marco had the edge because his Pokemon were just a little bit stronger, and he made some really nice predictions to propel him to the top of that first game.
Yeah, got some good calls on the switches. Got some good damage spread out, even though Gastrodon was boosting itself up in the Dynamax. Was able to take out the Duraludon, but other than that, Dynamax Gastrodon, not a huge offensive threat, mostly just to get those boosts here. So it looks like Edu is very happy to lead with the exact same, with the Arcanine and Gastrodon, this time catching the Sylveon and Rotom Heat from Marco.
Yeah, so Rotom Heat, maybe the mix-up here predicting a potential Durant somewhere in the back, but I think here, you now have the ability on Eduardo's end to just click Snarl, which is really great against both of these special type attackers. They really won't be doing very much damage. Gastrodon
no fake
can choose
support.
Exactly. Gastrodon can Dynamax, go for Max Quake, and get continuous special defense boost. So, I mean, the main question, once again, is like Gastrodon is a pretty good Pokemon to Dynamax in this matchup. You just have to deal with the Conkeldurr a little bit better. And maybe Eduardo is saying, okay, I still have the tools to deal with that. I just need to make sure that my Togekiss hangs on for a little bit longer this time around.
Okay, well, there's Conkeldurr switching in favor of the Rotom Heat as Eduardo switches out Gastrodon for Togekiss. A good Pokemon to have out against this Conkeldurr. Arcanine just goes for a Safeguard, so trying to avoid any potential status effects from Marco's side, but it's not going to be status, it's just going to be damage. Hyper Voice connecting with both the Togekiss and the Arcanine.
That's a lot of damage with Hyper Voice there, too, especially because of the lack of a Snarl. One thing that I wanted to talk about before this game started was I thought Togekiss is also a pretty good candidate to Dynamax, especially because of its matchup specifically against Conkeldurr. But getting all that damage off before a potential Dynamax, I think, is a really big deal. Especially
basically double value.
Exactly. And I mean, if Conkeldurr chooses to Dynamax here, perhaps a Max Hailstorm will be able to just knock out the Togekiss here. So I think that makes the option of Dynamaxing Togekiss a little bit more difficult. And the Safeguard really not doing very much on that first turn. But Conkeldurr actually opting for the switch out here.
Another switch out, so Conkeldurr switches in favor of Rotom on Marco's side. Here comes the Snarl finally on Sylveon and Rotom. High value Snarl dropping the special attack of both Pokemon on Marco's side. So those Hyper Voices aren't going to be dealing as much damage as they did before. You can see the effect of the Snarl immediately on both those Pokemon. Togekiss just going to be able to fire back with a Dazzling Gleam of its own. Not quite a Hyper Voice, but does get the critical hit on Sylveon.
Yeah, and Togekiss has taken so much damage at this point where you're thinking, I mean, I don't think it's going to Dynamax. And I think Marco making a proactive play, realizing, okay, Conkeldurr is the only way I can really beat that Gastrodon, so I just don't want to risk getting KO'd by anything. Might as well switch in Rotom. Rotom actually, I think, one of the best Pokemon in this format, really, to have out against both the Togekiss and Arcanine. So I think that's a great switch. And once again, Sylveon being faster than Togekiss is just such a big deal here.
Yeah, showing that Sylveon's faster than Togekiss means that there's only so much that Eduardo can get off before taking that big damage from Hyper Voice. May just be able to get more Snarls as Marco is just going to retweet the Rotom Heat again. Brings out the Conkeldurr, so Marco doing a lot of switching of partner Pokemon next to Sylveon. Eduardo doing the same for the partner to Arcanine. It looks like Marco got the matchup that he wanted. Conkeldurr back out again against the Gastrodon. But this time, Arcanine just goes for offense, picks up some damage on the Conkeldurr with that Flamethrower. Actually pretty decent damage, which will start adding up thanks to the burn as well.
Yeah, that's a lot of damage like you mentioned, and that is one of the approaches to knocking out the Conkeldurr. If you're able to do all this damage before it Dynamaxes, like you were just saying, that makes it just so much less effective. But this is a really interesting game. I mean, we are a few turns in and neither trainer has opted to Dynamax yet. And once again, I feel like Gastrodon is still a really good candidate for Eduardo to Dynamax, but he is slowly taking a lot of damage on all of these Pokemon, so he's going to want to make sure to conserve it, and Togekiss is also getting chipped away, so won't get that much more utility other than maybe a potential Follow Me later on. Still have to wonder what the last Pokemon on Eduardo's end is as well. If it is something like that Tyranitar, then your goal is to definitely just knock out Conkeldurr as quickly as possible. And I think in each turn there's been the potential to Dynamax, but both players are kind of playing the waiting game to see if their opponent Dynamaxes first.
Yeah, who's going to blink?
Yeah, let's see. No Dynamax once again.
Actually, a Protect coming out from Eduardo's Arcanine, so no Flamethrower, no Snarls, no switches. Hyper Voice from Sylveon connects with Gastrodon, so going to deal a little bit more damage right back.
Drain
and
Punch.
the Drain
Who's
Punch
going to? Goes into
connects with the
Arcanine.
Protect. So good call there from Eduardo, protecting the Gastrodon, and Gastrodon now able to get off a Recover, healing back all of the damage that Sylveon has been able to do with those Hyper Voices, while Conkeldurr starts continuing to whittle away at its health pool with that burn.
Oh, that was a huge play for Eduardo. I mean, if
recover.
the Drain Punch goes into that Gastrodon, probably just gets the knockout there.
Yeah.
So, wow, Gastrodon being able to heal all the way back to full. And that's one of the ways you can get around taking some chip damage before you Dynamax. Just heal it, and now you can click the Dynamax button. So
what chip damage?
I think like both players have been smart about not Dynamaxing either. Just waiting to see. And if there's any time, I think Gastrodon could Dynamax now. So let's see if it is finally time for a Dynamax.
Okay, well, Sylveon switches out for Rotom Heat as well as Togekiss coming in for Eduardo. Gastrodon actually just going for the Protect here, trying not to take any damage from Marco's Pokemon. But Conkeldurr actually just going for the Drain Punch on Togekiss. Doesn't deal a lot of damage because of the resistances. Heals up a little bit, probably just about enough to ignore the burn damage for one turn.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe you could go for the Dynamax onto Rotom and target the Conkeldurr, but I think one play that Eduardo has to be scared of is, of course, Conkeldurr just hard switching out into Rotom. One way you could get around that is actually, I guess, clicking Max Geyser instead. But Togekiss is now out, has redirection support, so you can go for something like a Follow Me, but I think Rotom can very easily click Thunderbolt into that slot without much problem. And Conkeldurr, now being able to move before the Gastrodon, can get a really, really big Drain Punch offs there. So I think that last turn was maybe an opportunity for Eduardo to get some more damage onto the Conkeldurr, but wanted to get a free switch in, I think, but Marco keeping up the momentum. Nice decision to switch onto the Rotom, and finally we're going to see a Dynamax.
Yeah, the first Dynamax of this second game, coming out actually much deeper into the match than before. It's going to be the Rotom Heat on Marco's side. So the big toaster oven out here has a pretty poor matchup against the Gastrodon, but able to deal a good amount of damage to the Togekiss with this Max Lightning. Easily able to pick up the KO on Togekiss with only the 40 hit points. No Follow Me's though, so that was an accurately targeted attack. Conkeldurr able to get off an attack on this Gastrodon now.
I have to wonder if Durant's Eduardo's last Pokemon. He's been playing it kind of like it is, honestly.
Yeah.
We'll see Drain Punch do a lot of damage in the Gastrodon, but
Whoa.
big chunk there.
Yeah, that's a huge chunk of damage onto Gastrodon, and even worse, that's going to heal Conkeldurr all the way up to almost full. The Rotom taking just a little bit of damage, enough to activate the berry here, heal up. So yeah, you're exactly right. Eduardo seems to be playing as if he has Durant in the back as the final sweeper, but that Rotom Heat's going to need to go down before it can come out.
Yeah, exactly. That actually might be the reason why Marco actually decided to conserve that Rotom Heat, realizing, okay, Eduardo might have Durant in the back, and if he does, I lose my Rotom Heat. How am I beating Durant? And there's really no way, even if I Dynamax Conkeldurr or Sylveon. So this has really been a fun set, I think, of both players making some really impressive plays, and once again showing the flexibility of Dynamax and choosing not to just aggressively Dynamax. And there is the Durant.
Whoa. Okay, well, Durant switching in against the Dynamax, the Rotom Heat, and Conkeldurr alongside Gastrodon. We saw that Eduardo sometimes uses the Durant as a Follow Me Pokemon, but I think he might need to get a little bit more out of it this time if he wants to force a Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got the Max Rockfall on the Durant, I think it's a pretty easy decision to go for the Dynamax and Max Rockfall. Otherwise, I think you might want to consider Dynamaxing and maybe protecting. I don't know, it's just weird because you know that the Conkeldurr is faster than the Gastrodon. So here, Marco has a really safe play where you just go for Max Flare into Durant and Drain Punch, and I think really, like, there's not much way around that. So let's see if Durant does have that Max Rockfall.
All right, Durant has Dynamax. It's just Steel Spike. That's going to connect with the Conkeldurr, pick up the KO there. So keeping the Gastrodon alive and healthy. Might be using a Dynamax Follow Me here to help that Gastrodon get a little bit more protected from whatever Pokemon Marco has in the back. Because that's the Max Flare. That's easily going to pick up the KO onto Durant. So Gastrodons and this Arcanine going to have to do a lot. We still don't know what the fourth Pokemon is that Marco has brought.
Marco's decision to Dynamax his Rotom was so smart because that also sets up the Sun now, so that Scald from Gastrodon does less damage. I think it's one of the reasons why Gastrodon goes for Recover. So, I mean, you have knocked out the physical attacker, which is the Conkeldurr. So, I mean, Gastrodon could maybe stall this out, but Eduardo just doesn't have very much damage at this point. He's down to Arcanine and Gastrodon. We know these are pretty bulky Pokemon as well. And I just think it's so smart on Marco to Dynamax this Rotom, especially keeping that in mind that Durant was probably in the back. And the lack of a Max Rockfall means that it's a lot tougher to knock out this Rotom Heat.
Okay, well, Arcanine is out. The Intimidate hits the Sylveon and the Rotom Heat. So if Marco did bring the Dracovish, not going to be intimidated by Arcanine a little bit later on. These are Eduardo's final two Pokemon. His last stand here in the Oceania International Championships, facing down the Rotom and the Sylveon.
I think here Arcanine's almost always clicking Snarl, which it is, and I think you probably go for like a Max Darkness Hyper Voice on Marco's end, as Gastrodon either just tries to chip away more with damage, maybe hold for a Scald Burn or Power Special Defense Drop. Could click Recover as well to deal with the Snarls that you know, or the damage that you know is coming out this turn.
Actually, Max Darkness targeting down the Arcanine. Marco trying to get that Snarl off the field as soon as possible. Gets those special defense drops as well, which are basically counteracting the Snarl that Arcanine just pulled off. Big Hyper Voice damage on both Pokemon, Arcanine and Gastrodon, and an Earth Power from the Gastrodon. Connects with Sylveon, not able to pick up the KO even close.
I think Max Stark is definitely the best move to go for there because, you know, you can still switch out right now on Marco's end. So the goal is basically knock out the Arcanine, and then Gastrodon can't really effectively deal with all Pokemon. So I think, like you said, we haven't even seen Marco's last Pokemon, and once again, just such a clever decision to Dynamax the Rotom Heat in this matchup. And it was, you know, kind of both players drawing it out, vying for the position that they want, and in the end, Marco said, you know what, I think now is the position for Rotom Heat to kind of just sweep through everything. So for Eduardo's end, you could click Snarl once again, but if you click Snarl, Arcanine will just faint, so maybe you consider protecting the Arcanine here, getting a critical hit with Gastrodon. But the question is, can Gastrodon even hang on from a Hyper Voice? There is the Protect, though. All
right, Arcanine's Protect here to avoid getting knocked out by the Hyper Voice or this Thunderbolt from the Rotom. Sylveon does go for the Hyper Voice, going to be incredibly important if this Gastrodon can survive this damage. It deals a lot, does not get to survive. Sylveon picks up the KO. Marco in an absolutely commanding position to become your next Oceania International Champion.
Yeah, he's got to be able to taste it now. There's pretty much nothing Eduardo can do to beat the combination of Rotom and Sylveon, not to mention Marco still has another Pokemon in the back.
The Flamethrower into the Rotom Heat. Arcanine trying its very best, but it's not going to be enough. Rotom's Thunderbolt did so much damage this entire match, and that's going to be it. Marco Silva is your new Oceania International Champion in the Masters division.
And certainly well-deserved based off his play from this set. I mean, truly some really cool adjustments. His team, on paper, looks like a team that you always want to prioritize, bringing Whimsicott, maybe leading it, but he recognizes that he doesn't necessarily need it in this matchup because Eduardo doesn't have Pokemon that are super fast. He realizes that, okay, Eduardo's team is relatively bulky. The main thing that really does a lot of damage is that Durant, and in that first game, Durant didn't even come out, so Marco was able to kind of comfortably play around the Conkeldurr, and I think the Rotom Heat was exactly the adjustment he needed to make in that second game, because I think if Marco went with the same 4 in game 1, Durant would have had a great matchup, and it's kind of why I was talking about how I wanted to see Eduardo bring Durant, but you can see Marco even one step ahead and counter the Durant, and just such a great decision to Dynamax with the Rotom Heat in that position. Like, I think like that was such an interesting second game because neither player Dynamax until like turn 5 or turn 6, and that just, how rarely does that happen in this metagame?
Yeah, absolutely. It took forever for us to see a Dynamax Pokemon there at the end of that game too. And I think what was really interesting was Marco's ability to adapt within game, take specifically the information of how Eduardo was playing that game too, to realize, okay, it's definitely Durant in the back.
Yes.
Now I know I need to preserve this Rotom Heat, and I need to make sure that it's fully healthy so I can Dynamax and put immense pressure on that team. And that's just so smart and something that it's very hard to miss when you're just following the action like this.
Yeah, in that position, it felt like, oh, Conkeldurr's a great Pokemon to Dynamax. You know, we saw it Dynamax in the first game. It did so much damage.
Was so good in the first game.
Yeah, but great awareness by Marco realizing, like, I need something to beat this Durant. And in the end, Durant did not have that max Rockfall, so only got one big attack off. And one turn I keep thinking about that maybe could have made this game substantially different is Eduardo Dynamax the Gastrodon on the turn that you are up against the Conkeldurr.
Right.
Do a lot of damage, maybe get the knockout after burn, and then even though that Rotom has Dynamax, you're up against like Sylveon and Rotom Heat. You've got Dynamax Gastrodon, you can keep clicking Max Quake to increase your special defense. You can even set up Max Geyser since you're going after Rotom Heat to set up the Sun. But you know, that's a tough position because I think that was the turn that Rotom Heat actually Dynamaxed.
Right.
So, I mean, just really, really impressive play, I think, from Marco, and I think Eduardo made great adjustments as well, but in the end, Marco felt like he was maybe one step ahead in that second game.
Yeah, Marco was one step ahead of that second game, and because of that, he is your new Oceania Internationals champion. And we're actually going to hear directly from the man himself downstairs on the main stage.
Thank you so much, Evan and Aaron. And can we give it up one more time for Marco Silva, your brand new Masters champion? How does it feel knowing that you have so many people in the crowd that are cheering for you and you just took home that international championship title?
It feels so good because we are not too many Italian, but we always try to encourage the other Italians that are doing good, and that's a beautiful thing that only us can do.
As I understand it, you ended up working with one of the seniors to create the team and come here to compete. What did you do to prepare for the match today?
We started preparing the team after we finished watching the other top 4 matches. We tried to recreate the team and play as much as we can to try to